My name is James Benton. I live in the North Riverside neighborhood.
My name is Linda Matney. I'm from Bluffton Cedar Park neighborhood. My name is Denise O'Leary Singer. I'm with Indian Hills Riverbend.
I'm Joel Weiss, Sherwood Glen.
I'm Brandon Finley. I'm your Community Services Representative for District 6.
Sean Rojas, Indian Hills, Riverbend.
Matt Brown, Orchard Park.
Greg Boyarzin, La Placida Park neighborhood.
Long Necker.
He's in Sunflower neighborhood. That's right. Some of you may not have been to a DAB meeting before, so I just want to talk a little bit about the process. So we have 2 zoning cases tonight, and then I think what many of you are here for tonight is the TNR, the trap, neuter, return presentation. So what we will do is we have the 2 zoning cases first, and then when we and how many of you are here for the zoning cases? Okay, all right. Everybody else here for TNR? Okay. When we get to TNR, I will set some ground rules for, I'll want to know how many people want to speak, and we'll set some ground rules for how long you have to talk. So just to let you know, as a city council member, I chair this meeting, I facilitate this meeting, but I do not vote. I vote when it comes to city council. So just so that you know, I have no vote tonight. The District Advisory Board is just that. They are an advisory board to city council, specifically to me in this particular instance. Their vote is not binding, but it is advisory, and city council members all take what the district advisory boards, their recommendations very seriously. So that's why we have these, and it's an opportunity for the public to express their opinions too. So with that, we will begin, and I think we have a police officer. Are you here to talk tonight?
Yes.
Officer Johnson, so you want to give us an update?
Sure. Hi everybody, I'm Officer Brent Johnson. I'm the Community Policing Officer for 41B. So that runs from Central to 17th Street and Broadway to the river. I'm representing the north side of town today. So I have 3 different cases I really wanted to talk to everybody about today within the district. First was we had a robbery at Mr. Taco in the 700 block of West 25th Street on April the 22nd. That was unknown suspects on that one, and there's a knife involved with that, but we ended up, no one was injured. If you guys have any information on that, please do pass that along either to Crime Stopper or 911, and we'll make sure that information gets passed along. Then on May the 2nd, in the 2400 block of North Market, we had a drive-by. There was people inside that residence, but thankfully no one was hurt. We have unknown suspects on that, and we're really looking for any leads possible on that one. So if you do hear anything about that again, please pass that along. And then finally, a drive-by in a 3300 block North Jackson on May the 4th, which again was unknown suspects, and the residence was hit 5 different times with people inside, but again, thankfully no one was injured on this one as well. So right now, as the summer months start to get hotter and we start to get more and more busy in the police department, we see a lot more activity. So we're getting busier and busier with some of the more serious crimes. There's been a lot of drive-bys. We've seen some gang activity. So please, I try and remind everybody, if you hear gunshots, if you see anything suspicious, anything of that nature at all, please call 911. Do not feel like you're bothering us. Do not feel like you're wasting our time. That's what we get paid to do, and that's what we're here for. So please call us. We want to work on these crimes as much as we can, as quickly as possible, to save lives if we have to, and save property right after that. So, with that, does anybody have any questions for me as a representative of the police department?
Any questions from the board?
I have a question. I went to get my car washed today, and there was a gentleman there that had been drinking over there. He went to sit down, his gun fell out of his pocket and rattled across the floor.
Oh my goodness.
Should we be calling on something like that?
Yes, that's one thing that we do have in the law here in Kansas is there is a, under the influence, carrying a concealed handgun. So if you're carrying a handgun, the same requirements would be for if I was going to do a driving under the influence. So if I go up and investigate that and I find that person is, drunk, unable to walk straight, all the tests that I would normally do for a DUI, I would do for that same investigation. So if you notice that, please do call, because obviously their judgment's impaired. Who knows what could happen if that weapon started getting discharged. So please do call. Go ahead.
I'm, registered with Nextdoor, and I think it was about 2 weeks ago, there was a break-in through the back door in the 2400 block in North Litchfield, and they stole, whoever it was stole guns and jewelry, and I'm not sure, whatever. Have there been any other incidents that you're aware of in that area?
Not specifically that area, but
I
yeah.
know that's not here.
But that's a jackpot for a lot of these burglars, is that they're looking for firearms, at the very least to commit any other crime, or just to sell because they know they can get big money for them. So, yeah, we see that quite a bit actually.
So is it usually somebody that's been in the house before, like a friend or something, that knows they have?
That's usually something we look into. We always want to check, because we always want to check if there's a reasoning why they would know that there would be a firearm in there, or why would they know that a certain amount of money would be in there. So we always try to look into that. So.
May I ask where you were getting your car washed?
No. That's a good question. You don't want to go back.
Joe's Car Wash on West Street.
Go ahead.
I have a question for you about video footage, and how useful do you think that is, and is it worth investing for our own house? I know people in our neighborhood have sent out, we share emails together, and you're like, oh, look out for this truck, or this person walked up to my front step and took this package. But is that useful in actually tracking that person down?
I would say it's the #1 tool we have right now. For crime deterrence, for following up on leads, a number of things. But video is the biggest thing that I can take before a court, or the detective can take before a court, and say, this individual right here in the video was the one that did X, Y, or Z. It's huge for any case that we have. And so it's good for you as a homeowner. You can, a lot of the times you guys can access this video on the fly, just pulling up your phone and seeing that. That's a great thing for you to be able to say, I have this information and now I'm going to call 911 with it. That helps us a lot, but it helps us a lot for getting our cases charged. So I would say it's huge. If you don't have a camera system, please do it. Please do get one. Anybody else?
Any other
Is
questions?
there any class to help people know how to do that?
Know how to get videos and use them?
Well, how to, with the proper way and everything. I wouldn't have a clue on how to do something like that.
A lot of those, the different technologies that come out, they'll have some pretty good step-by-step stuff. Like they might actually have, certain places have software online that they'll walk you through everything with a video, and certain things, and they might say, if you want to do this, do that. But I would say, before you decide to do any cameras and you're maybe not very tech savvy, I would probably look into reviews and all that kind of stuff, and do some research before I would pay money to do that sort of thing.
It'd be nice if they had a class at the library, one of the branches,
They might.
about that.
I don't know. You might check. Yeah, they
There are
might.
classes about a lot of things.
That's right. Anything else for Officer Johnson? Thank you. All right. Approval of the minutes.
Move
Last
to
meeting.
approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, or revisions? All in favor, please say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Okay, those passed. And we have one scheduled item on public agenda tonight, so Tobacco Free Wichita is here. 5 minutes.
Right here?
Yeah, that's fine. If you give your name and address.
My name is Elena Devora, and 5700 East Mainsgate Road. And good evening. As I said, my name is Elena Devora, and I am the youth coordinator with Tobacco Free Wichita. TFW has been partnering with City Council and the county to improve health since 1970. TFW has been working with the city to raise awareness in the community for the past 2 years, and now we're asking to adopt a tobacco-free park and trails ordinance. We have been working with Parks and Recs, Wichita Police, and the fire departments to develop the proposed ordinance, and is currently being discussed by the Parks Board. Tobacco-free parks and trails will hopefully help create a cleaner park, promote wellness. Our biggest one is to reduce youth exposure to tobacco, enhance parks user experience, and we hope for it to align with the school board, with the school system, I mean. A tobacco-free ordinance will send a clear message that we care about our community, especially our youth. The Surgeon General report says that there are no safe levels of secondhand smoke, even in outdoor spaces. So if you can smell it, you are exposed to it. No tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, will be permitted in any city of Wichita-owned parks and trails. It will not include the golf courses or like private-owned parks. So I did not bring enough flyers today. I know there's going to be so many people, but we did an environmental scan, and what that is we went to every park in the district, and we tried to see where we were finding the litter. And we found it concentrated around the playground, inside of the playground, or in like that little border area. And one of the parks we just cleaned up was Sleepy Hollow. Our Mighty Youth Chapter Resist went and cleaned it up, and Mayor's Youth Council went and cleaned up. We found over 1,000 cigarette butts in an hour. This is one of the worst parks we have ever found, and this just happened this weekend. It was so bad that around the playground and like around where the picnic areas are, when we were cracking through the first layer of cigarette butts, there was another layer and then another layer, and then we had to get to the dirt, and then it was so concentrated, we stopped counting after 1,000 because we just got frustrated cleaning it up. So it just shows who has truly been using this particular park, and it's the one right by Wesley. We found packets of like cigarette cartons, cigarillo wrappers everywhere in this park. Citrus County Park has been one of the worst ones too. We found a pack of brand new cigarettes with a lighter in it, and it's on a bench when we got there inside the play space. And it was right there where kids can reach it, and we had families coming over from a different event. So cigarette litter is the #1 source of litter in our parks. It takes 10 years to break down, just the filter alone, because it's not made out of cotton, it's made out of plastic. It can be swallowed by little toddlers. We have pets, dogs that go, we have wildlife, and then it goes into the waters where the fish go. Right next door we have it's called Tops. I am working with them full time, and they have their little ones go into Evergreen Park for field trips, and I personally have seen these little kids stick cigarette butts into their pockets and bring it into the classrooms. So with that in mind, it is clear if there's this much toxic litter in our parks that we have cleaned up, people and kids in the parks are being exposed to it. Our city is spending a lot of money in our parks just to fix it up, and we want them to stay clean, and we want them to be used by families, have more events happen. So that is it, and that's what I'm here. Thank you for having me today. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Elena, can you spell your last name, please?
D-E-D-O-R-A.
And your first name?
Elena, E-O-E-N-A.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank
I
you,
will
Elena.
say, one sec, I am a smoker, and I'm all for what you do. That, anybody that throws down a cigarette butt ought to be in big trouble.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, so this is the time now where, if anyone is here to speak on something that is not on the agenda, and you would like to speak on a topic, you came for some other topic that you want to speak about, this would be the time to do that. But if it's on the agenda, we'll allow time. Yes, ma'am, if you'll come up here and name and address, please. And I'll give you 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Bree Pringle. I'm with the American Heart Association. We're actually here in support of tobacco-free Wichita, so I will take 3 minutes or less because Elena did such an amazing job. My address is 814 Lexington Row. So I'm here to, again, urge with the tobacco-free parks policy to strongly consider voting yes on this. As a mother also, I've been at our Wichita parks every weekend for a month now, and everything Elena said about not just the litter, but the exposure is 100% accurate. I will not forget the fact that I got to take my kid to do his first pony ride at Watson Park, and I got to stand in line next to someone who was smoking. My 5-year-old and 3-year-old. It shouldn't be my job to tell them this is a place for us to be healthy. This is a place for me to take my kids out and get exercise. because guess what, less than 30% of kids in America get enough exercise as is. So when we have those areas where they can get out, they can move more and do those things, we should protect those. We should protect those areas and make sure that they are as welcoming and inviting and open to everyone. Heaven forbid if my kids had had asthma or something like that. But it's very rampant throughout our parks and at every single one. And we like to park hop all over Wichita, and we really need to protect those kids through every park. And this policy would mirror our schools policies and our athletics facilities. So if we're willing to protect and not expose our kids to those there, I think we should be willing to extend it to our parks and trails.
Thank you. Anybody else on something that's not on the agenda?
I just have 2 comments. It's not a question or anything.
Okay, yes, Mary, can you give us name and address?
Mary Cole, 2525 North Somerset Avenue. It's not too far from here. I just want to thank Cindy for her vote in voting down the cell tower for North Riverside. And the second, on Sunday was the first time I heard about this deal about Gander Mountain. And I'm glad the city is pausing, you know, to do some more investigation. So it was like this non-transparency thing, and it was just here. So it's just thanking you.
Sure, and we hadn't seen the full agreement, that's why we said, well, the citizens haven't seen this either, so.
And so
we'll
I
wait till
just
you
want to
can see
thank you.
it. You're welcome, thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, so, our first zoning case, and Kathy, you're on.
Kathy Morgan, Metropolitan Area Planning Department. Zone 2914 is to amend a protective overlay that was part of a limited industrial addition, 1.7 acres, and there's a lot in there that the owner wants to have outdoor storage of recreational vehicles, boats, that type of thing. There will be no salvage there. The requirement, the original overlay, protective overlay, did not allow that. This is something that is usually allowed within a limited industrial area. And so what staff is recommending be done is that this lot only, there are 5 lots in this Burleson addition that is zone limited industrial. And so this applies only to lot 5. That's right. Yes. Lot 5, block A, would be permitted to have outdoor storage of recreational vehicles, boats. They have to be operable. They have to be parked on at least a gravel surface, not on the grass. The property has to be screened on all sides. The property also has a limited access gate to come into, and there will be a small building for an office area there. So, let's see. There is some parking out by the office building, and then there will be a landscape buffer that's, there's single-family residential to the north and to the east of the property, to the west of the property. To the east of the property is additional limited industrial zoning, and then of course to the south is limited industrial zoning. So staff is recommending that with these conditions being met, that the protective overlay be approved with the screening, with the landscaping. Only the gravel area will be allowed to have vehicles parked on it. And there was a site plan that was submitted, in the packet you received. And you can see, I think the only thing that's not indicated on there, it shows the 6-foot, fence on the north side, but it would also be required all the way around the property. And I will stand for any questions from you, Dab. Yes, sir.
Has there been any pushback from neighboring residents?
I've had a couple of calls, about this. The indication was kind of half and half. Once I mentioned that it would be screened, there was gonna be landscaping required, that it was a secured facility, the gate and everything. There didn't seem to be, too much of like I said, half and half. So, but I did not receive that many phone calls. I think I had 3.
We'll take the questions from the DAB first, and then I'll ask you. Is there anything else from the board?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill?
What's gonna happen to this unimproved area? That's part of the site, but it's not gonna be used for outdoor storage.
Right. If the applicant wants to increase the outdoor storage, they are going to have to rock that and give us provide a new site plan.
Okay, so we're gonna have a 6-foot minimum, a 6-foot wooden fence. We're gonna have
All the way around the lot, not
One-
just the parking, or where they're parking.
We're gonna have 1.5 times more landscaping.
Right, per the landscape, yes.
So is that also gonna include increasing the height of the trees that are gonna go in there in regards to, say, typically you're looking at a 6-foot deciduous tree. If you take 1.5, could you up it to 9 foot? Get better coverage to start on the landscaping?
I mean, I guess that could be recommended as a condition, but all we're saying is that instead of one tree every 40 feet, we
Right.
have, because that property line is 271 feet.
Right.
So that would be, you can do the math in their head.
More trees,
Pardon?
more.
Thank you, Joanne.
That was very helpful. 7 trees, and so 1.5 times, so it'd be 11 trees along there. And I don't know, the landscape ordinance, they would have to meet the requirements of the landscape ordinance on the height of the tree.
Which varies according to the tree. 6-foot minimum as far as deciduous. I mean, 6 foot isn't very a high screening when you're gonna have SUVs back there or boats. Boats are fine for, you have SUVs back there too?
You mean RVs?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's RVs.
RVs, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I got.
Okay, but as you can see, the RVs, the approved area is, what did I figure that was? It's over 100 feet from the north property line where they're allowed to park. So that would mitigate some, the 6-foot fence would mitigate some of the visual impact of the RVs. Because you're right, they are tall. I think they're 14 feet, 12 foot.
I guess I didn't understand with respect to the planting of the trees. Is that just between Hoover Road and the property, or is that all the way around the property with the sheep?
Okay, it would be along the property lines that abut residential. So it would be the north and east,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, west, it's my other east. The north and west property line where there's single-family residential abutting or across the street from it.
Okay. And to follow on with that, there was a second part of a presentation given here a couple of months back with respect to the sidewalk or the extended path that would be going from 21st Street all the way up, is that correct, along Hoover
Right,
Road?
this is a Hoover Road multi-use path that, Public Works.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
Public Works project. So they are coming in and buying right away. I don't think that's one of the properties, I think, but I don't know if there's, and I don't really know if there's enough room there or not.
Yeah, it eventually, the way I took it, eventually there would be a path put in,
There will be
3-foot, 4-foot path,
10-foot.
10-foot path, okay.
On the east side of Hoover Road?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct, Kathy.
Yes.
Yeah, so the conversation is also with respect to, trees or bushes being put in with respect to the easement on that side.
Well, there is a 35-foot building setback
Okay.
And that's.
along that property line.
Is that for the fence, the start of the, is that for the west side of the fence?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So 35 feet from
Okay.
the road is where the west side is.
Right. That's correct.
I think
Some-
going
Go ahead.
along those lines, how do the property owners feel about the food path going through? Or
I have
do
no
they-
idea. That
do
has
they know
nothing to
about
do
it? I mean,
with the recommendation of the planning department on the zoning.
Right. Other questions for Kathy? Kathy, I have one just to
Okay.
clarify. So lots 1 through 4 that are not, don't have the gravel down, right?
Right.
If they came, they would have to come, if they wanted to use that, they would have to come back and ask for approval on lots 1 through 4?
Yeah, they would, yes, they would have to, if they wanted to change the use, and I think I thought I identified in there, let's see. The 4 lots south of this site there's a, utility gas company that has their maintenance offices there. There are other uses already in place that have developed parking and whatever, so if they wanted to come back in and request vehicles, storage, operating vehicle storage, they would have to go through the same process and show that they have the parking available for that type of thing, in addition to what parking they have for the business that are already there. So this only pertains to lot 5.
So, following, I'd like to say on the fencing, so how much of a setback is there for the fencing along the north side and the east side from the residential property?
The north side and the west side.
The west-
So we would go to the building setback line for the fencing on the west side, and along.
Is the easement then? I said that incorrectly. I thought the residential was on the east side. I made a mistake.
That's limited industrial on the east
Okay.
side.
So from the north side then, how far back is the setback of the fence?
Okay, so what the deal is, the fence can be built on the property line, and then they have a landscape buffer of 10 feet where they have to do this 1.5 times the landscape requirement.
So I'm unfamiliar with the buffer.
Pardon?
I'm unfamiliar with the buffer. What is meant by that? Is that between?
It's 10 feet wide on the south side of the fence.
So.
Inside.
Inside.
Yeah, it would be inside the
Inside.
fence on the
So the neighbor-
applicant's property.
So the residents will be looking at the fence, not the trees.
Well, the trees above the fence.
Okay.
But they could put the trees outside the fence, couldn't they, Kathy?
Well, they could, but it'd still have to be on their property.
Right, right.
And they
pull
would
the
have to
fence-
maintain it.
And pull the fence back 10 feet.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to drive by the property. The fence is already up.
No, because
Yeah.
the one I got in my presentation, it wasn't clear as exactly where the
Where
property
the address was, well, the fence is already up, so, all the way around the property.
Yeah, all the way around.
Yeah, so I have one more question for you. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg, are you finished?
Yes, I am.
I
Thank
do
you
have
for-
one more question. So there was there is a protective overlay.
Yes.
And so why was it put there in the first place? You know?
Whoever developed that Burleson addition and developed the zoning as limited industrial, put that in as a request from staff because of the proximity, because there's residential up there. But this is like any other zoning case. You can request to amend a protective overlay or a conditional use or whatever. And in this instance, they're requesting that be amended on that lot 5.
Okay. Ready to go out to the audience? All right.
I have one more
Yeah,
question.
yeah, sure.
About lighting. Is there
Mhm.
any lighting restrictions or do the standard restrictions apply?
The standard restrictions on limited industrial would apply.
Okay.
Yeah, and so lighting is, in limited industrial, the lighting is focused down so that it doesn't have a lot of, it's shielded so it doesn't bleed over into the residential neighborhood. And the applicant is here also, he can
Okay.
answer any questions.
That's good. All right. Anything else from the board? All right, so I'll open up to the audience now, and if you'll come up and state your name and address, and I'll give, for the zoning cases, I'll give you each 5 minutes.
Good evening, my name is Mark Raywinkle. I live at 2919 North Hoover Road, just north of the proposed auto storage facility. First, I want to say I'm pro-business. I've made a great living in Wichita for the last 27 years in the machine tool business, and I love business. I have nothing against an auto storage facility, but certainly a neighborhood can have too many. And that is the case of North Hoover. If you look at the first page that I presented to you, within a half mile or closer to the subject property, we have not one, not two, not three, but we have 4 storage facilities. Superior Self-Storage has 2 locations, one on 23rd Street, the other on 29th. Max Secure Storage, right there at Zoo Boulevard and Hoover. And then we have Zoo Park Storage, which is right adjacent, right behind the subject property. All 4 of these locations, you can store vehicles. Whether that's boats, cars, motorcycles, campers, you name it, it can be stored. If you go further up Hoover Road to 3059 North Hoover, there is Sandlin Iron and Metal, and it is a auto salvage business. It's been there for a long time. I simply don't believe that we need another auto storage facility. You know, if you take a look at the pictures, those are other businesses along Hoover within a stone's throw of the subject property. The first picture shows other storage facilities like the Superior and the Max. They all have nice setbacks off of the road. They're all landscaped nicely with a green belt or a lawn out front. And they all have nice looking buildings. If you go to the last page, you'll see the subject property. It looks like a Civil War fort to me.
What direction is this looking?
That fence, if you stood in front of the fence and looked out on Hoover Road, you'd be looking west.
You're looking, okay, so this is looking east back at the property?
Correct.
Okay.
From the other side of Hoover Road.
Yeah.
Steve Cox, owner of Cox Machine, I spoke to him today. He was not able to be here tonight. He is the original developer of Zoo Park Storage. He told me to convey to the DAB that he prefers this auto storage being denied. He has more property to develop in the area, and this rezoning would not help his property values nor anyone else's. I've lived on Hoover Road for 21 years. I like it there. I like the development that's going on there and the redevelopment of Hoover Road. I not only live there, but I bought 2 other pieces of property south of where I live at 2521 and 2537. I've owned 2537 for 15 years, have remodeled this house and built a new garage for the property. 3 years ago, I bought the property at 2521 to remove an old decrepit mobile home that was for many years a place one could go buy all the meth you wanted and any other drug. So by buying that property, I removed the trailer, and I intended to build a 3-bedroom house. I'm starting to rethink that because of the proposed storage that's going on just south of that property. My question is the auto storage yard in line with the surrounding businesses? Do they look the same? No, they don't. Not even close. I also ask, it is in line with the new Sandcrest community. Just north of the subject property, about a half a mile or less is Sandcrest. I believe there's going to be well over 150 homes there in that lake community. Very nice community. Is it in line with that? No, it is not. And is the auto storage yard in line with the new bike path coming down from 96? I again have to say no. Last comment.
Okay.
There's not enough room, in my mind, to put a 10-foot bike path and do a good job of landscaping. So I respectfully ask that you deny the rezoning request and that this property not be allowed to store automobiles, boats, cars, motorcycles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next person, anybody else?
My name is Mark Bauer. I live at 2615 North Hoover, and about the same story as Mark just told you. I'm very proud of my house. I worked my tail off on it, and to prove it, the county keeps raising my taxes. I'm concerned with a piece of property like this going on down the street that it's going to divide the property. And I could pretty much tell you the county does not want some money back, that's for sure. Let me have it. So, in order to keep with the integrity of the neighborhood, it just doesn't seem to fit. And it seemed like the city leaders that put the overlay on it in the first place might have a little insight of what was happening or going to happen in the neighborhood. All the developments to the north, and they're not cheap houses. I mean, there's some houses around our neighborhood that are selling for over $1 million. So structures like this just don't fit in. They just don't work. I also own a piece of property directly across the street from this property. It's an empty lot. At least it is right now. And I'm kind of on the fence, pardon the pun, but I'm kind of on the fence about allowing this type of business and structure in this neighborhood. But at some point in time, I may want to develop my property. And if you see fit to allow this development to finish taking place, it might be all right, because then I could probably put up some inappropriate structure of my own, right next door. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this item? Yes, sir.
My name is Jeremy Libby. I live at 2370 North Hoover, directly north of the facility that's being built.
Sir, could you, I'm sorry, could you spell your last name for me?
Libby.
Thank you.
So at first, I was a little bit settled because of it being storage units, because it's during the daytime, it's not much noise, it's not much activity. However, with it being open storage, and the rails of the fencing are on, literally I have 12 inches of space between my fence and their fence. There's no way to actually ever read it. The fence line on the west side is right where that sidewalk will be, so it'll have to be moved back, and there will be no room for landscaping. The railing of the fence is on both the outside of the north and the south side, which would be easy access for anybody to climb, especially when I have a fence that's right next to it. It'd be easy footholds to go over the top of it. I own an RV personally myself, so I know the height. I have a storage unit connected to my home, so I don't really want to have to be forced to look at 12 to 13 foot high RVs or any other kind of obstacles that way. The fence is nice now. Everybody else had to have concrete fence with landscaping to keep the sites looking nice and appropriate with the neighborhood. I've been working on my butt off to remodel my small house. May not be an expensive one on the block, but it's gonna look really good when I'm done. And I don't really wanna look at a fence that may or may not be taken care of in the next 5 years with weather, rot, and not being stained and kept up. There's no guarantees that it would. So I vote no for myself and my family, and I know my neighbors are all in agreement with it. So.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this?
Don Mann, live at 306 North Kentucky Lane. I'm the owner of the property. It is limited industrial. It has got a fence around it. It's not finished because of this weed. I can't really put any more money into it until I find out what's going on. Am I willing to do all the trees? I'm willing to do all the trees that I have to put in there. I was told by the city I could put the fence on the line and put the trees inside the fence. So I did what I was told. I can understand that you think that there's not enough room there for the sidewalk. I don't know if the sidewalk goes down that far. I'm not sure. Okay.
It does.
But there is a 35-foot setback. I'm on the back side of that. So I'm following the guidelines that I've been told by the city. This all started because I wanted a place to store my RV that's not $250 a month. And you can go around to all those 5 different places that he mentioned, and they're all $150 to $220 a month to store your RV. Now the problem is, there's a lot of new subdivisions going up just north of this property. And what's going to happen to me, to them, is the HOAs come in and say, you can't store your RV at your house. You can't store your boat at your house. So they gotta have some place to store it. So now they have to pay 60, 70 bucks a month, 80 bucks a month to have a place to store their boat because they can't put it in the driveway in front of their own house. So that's how all this started, was to have a place that was affordable. And I would like to put covers up, believe me, I would like to put covers up, but I gotta get through this stage first. I put the pickets on the inside, sir, so I could manage them. I can't manage them from your property. I can't manage them from the back property behind me, which is a luxury storage building, which are thousands of dollars a month. I'm trying to get something that's affordable for people. Before I ever got the loan from the bank to start this project, they made me go to WSU and find out what's the most needed thing in Wichita for storage. And I had to pay $375 for that. And it's not a 10 by 10 storage unit, believe it or not. It's not a 10 by 10 storage unit. That's what I wanted to build in there, was storage buildings. What I found out from them, the number one thing needed in Wichita, Kansas is outdoor storage. Because most places don't have it. They have indoor storage where you can pay an exorbitant amount of money that people really can't afford to do. And that's what started this whole project. I've followed the guidelines by what the city has told me, where to put the fence, what to do. I haven't finished the project because I stopped throwing money at it because I didn't know if this was gonna pass. If it does, I'll be more than happy to put up all the trees. I'll be more than happy to take care of the fence and stain the fence and everything that I'm gonna do. But I'm not gonna throw a lot more money at it if I can't get a protective overlay off of it. And this is in a limited industrial zoned area that a business like this is, it's not an illegal business, it's not anything that I'm doing is illegal. So I would like you to approve. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Anybody else? All right, I'll bring it back to the board then. Questions from the board?
I have a question. So without this overlay taken, there could be a nightclub or a kennel, marine facility, a pawn shop could go there, right?
No.
Is that what that's saying here?
No, it says,
In
first thing it says, they shall not be permitted, and then it gives a list of things that aren't permitted, very first part of the PI.
Oh, following use is permitted in L one shall
No,
not be permitted.
shall not be permitted.
Okay. Unless they get an overlay or something like that.
Look at the overlay.
So in L one, limited industrial, what can go there?
I mean, look at the second also of the PO. I mean, it gives a list of things that you could put in LI zoning, but they're prohibited on this lot and block. I mean, it says, vehicle storage yards should be permitted in lot 5, block A.
Mhm.
Following uses permitted in LI shall not be permitted.
Shall not be permitted.
So, I mean, it's basically the same thing as you've got in one. I hope I haven't spoken too quickly, but, so you've got a lot of LI uses that are not permitted because of the PO. You know, the LI zoning's been there for, 19 years now. You know, the only thing it's too bad the fence went up, because, I mean, if you drive around this area and you look at these other storage facilities, you've got masonry, which costs more, but it's lower maintenance. And it's not as visually as boring, but boy, 6-foot wooden fence isn't gonna cover up much when you've got a RV that's 14, 12 foot. You're gonna have some pretty good trees go in. And then, you know, maybe after, if you put like a 9-foot tree in there, deciduous tree, maybe after 10 years, you're gonna have about, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, 15 foot, depends on the weather, you know. So, I think the wooden fence is kind of a consideration that really doesn't match with what we've got going on in the area. So, but I mean, more intense landscaping could help break that up. That's about all I've got.
Thanks, Bill. Other things from the board? Somebody ready to make a motion?
So we could use wood or stone.
Yeah, so you could add those things to your motion if you so desire.
I have a question to the owner. for the north side fence, how do you feel about moving that fence to 10 feet and putting the trees on the other side?
Who's gonna maintain the property in there?
It'd be on your property.
I understand that, that's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem moving the fence back 10 feet and putting 11 trees in there. I really don't have a problem with that. My point is, right now, he owns the property, and yes, it's okay for me to get in there and do the maintenance on it and all that other stuff, but if his fence starts breaking down, which it is, then I've got issues there. I'm just saying, I don't have a problem moving it, I really don't, if the protective overlay comes off.
You own the 10 feet though,
I own the 10 feet.
so that would have nothing to do.
Okay, we're not,
Why
we're
don't
not gonna have it.
I still have to have
Sorry.
access to maintain that.
I'm gonna bring
hey,
this, okay, guys, we'll bring this back to the board, there's no back and forth, it's a business meeting, so no back and forth in the audience, please. All right, any other questions from the board?
When you're ready to make a recommendation, I'll chime in. Are you ready for a recommendation?
I am ready for a recommendation.
Based on the owner's perspective, I would accept or make a proposal to accept the staff recommendation with the limitation that the fence on the north side moves south 10 feet and that the trees that were slated to go there would still go between the two fences, which would mean the property line of the owner north of that and the fence. That would be my stipulation, and that's
Hey,
what
Greg,
would
Greg,
go
could you, I have to keep minutes for these. So if you could just,
to her.
if you could just repeat that, so I make sure I get that right.
Based upon staff recommendation, the proposal is made to accept it with the modification that the north fence be moved 10 feet south and that the trees that were plated to go there, 1.5 overall, would be planted outside the fence. So they would cover, the trees would be a buffer zone between the property line and the fence.
Or you're increasing the minimum height for landscape ordinance to get a.
This is where I could use some help. If there, in doing that, if there is something that we would need to be supportive of doing that, this would be the time to do. But
Yeah.
this is my perspective of seeing it, to help hopefully allow development of the property to go forward, and then also help with neighborhood concerns.
I'll second Greg's motion.
So was there a third, did you add a third piece to this?
No, there is nothing coming.
Okay.
Bill made a was talking to me. We did not come to a complete understanding, so no, there is no.
Bill, before we entertain the second, do you have a suggestion about tree height and what kind of tree to put in?
Minimum 9 foot for deciduous trees. I mean, we're increasing the landscaping by 1.5, but we got a 6 foot wooden fence that's already there. We're gonna, we get a 9 foot deciduous tree up there, at least we're gonna have something in 5-6 years that's gonna begin to, break up what we're gonna be seeing beyond that 6 foot fence in regards to the RVs.
So it would be the 10-foot buffer zone with 9-foot insidious trees.
So, Greg, will you take that as a friendly amendment or not?
Yes, make that all part of the amendment.
Second? Okay, all right.
That was you.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, wait, so let me make sure.
Yes.
So staff recommendation with the fence on the north side moved south 10 feet, trees be planted on the north side of the fence on the outside, and 9-foot trees on that north side.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the motion. Okay, discussion.
I think we ought to have the 9 foot also on the west side, because we got single-family residential there also. Is that okay, Gregory?
Yeah, that, and we need to make sure that's going to accommodate what the path is going to go in there. Staff has to do some research to make sure that that still can be done.
Yeah, staff does have on number 6 of the amended PO, that it has to have the pedestrian traffic circulation approved. So I'm taking the pedestrian circulation to be that 10-foot wide path, or is that, should I not assume that?
I'm not sure we should assume that, because that's coming from Public Works.
Then I think we ought to go ahead and make a note of that.
Yeah, and I have. I was gonna talk to Gary
As part of the
tomorrow.
amendment to the PO, is to make sure we don't interfere with that.
So north side and west side with additional staff research.
Okay. Greg, take those as friendly amendments? Okay, so on the west side, 9-foot trees, and then staff research on the path.
Correct. Make sure that the fence and the trees would be in the right place.
Yeah.
So the applicant doesn't have to do it 2 times.
Okay.
So that fence, trees, and path are all congruent on the west side.
Right. With the new path.
Can we ask a question at this point?
Yes.
Is there any consideration about, we have nice looking buildings?
Okay, no, now you've made that point. No,
Okay.
you're not just asking a question, so, no. So you've had the say, I'm sorry, this is how the things operate here, and if I give you the time, then I have to do that all the time, and we're just not going to do it back and forth, okay? So I think that DAB understands your perspective. If one of them has a question for you, I will allow that, okay? All right, everybody understand what the motion is? Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same.
Aye.
Okay, I need a show of hands. All in favor, please say aye, or hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed, 2. 6 to 2. Okay, all right. Kathy, can you, particularly for the neighbors and the applicants' benefit, can you tell us what the next steps are on this zoning case?
The next step is this will be heard at the May 23rd Planning Commission. So if the neighbors would send information in, either through an email to me or send a letter outlining the things that you have talked about tonight, then when the packets get mailed out or emailed to the planning commission members, they will have that to look over.
And then can you tell us about if MAPC approves it, then there's a protest period, right?
Right, after the planning commission meeting, there's a 14-day protest period. And any, 20%, if 20% of the area within 200 feet of the lot has protest petition, then it requires that the city council approve the action, assuming that the action of the planning commission is to approve the amendment to the protective overlay, then the city council would have to have a supermajority vote to overturn, or to approve rather, the action of the commission, of the planning commission, if their recommendation is to approve the amendment to the overlay.
And just so you know, so planning commission is the public hearing. When it comes to city council, we will not take public input. We'll read emails that you send or letters that you send, and we'll read the whole packet that comes from DAB tonight and from the planning commission on May 23rd, and any protest petitions. But at city council, it's not a public meeting. I mean, it's a public meeting, but we take no public input. So your next step for public input is at the MAPC, and their vote is binding.
Where is that located?
It's in 271 West Third, in the Ronald Reagan Building. It's on the second floor. And that's in the letter that you received notifying you of this meeting also.
And it's at 1:30?
Yes, it begins at 1:30. It's Thursday, May 23rd at 1:30.
All right, thank you, Kathy. All right, I think we are ready for the next case then.
Okay, this is a zone change from single family to TF3, which is duplex zoning, and it with a conditional use request to allow more than one duplex building on the lot. The lot is a half an acre. It is immediately to the east is a development by the same owner that has four buildings, which means there are 8 units there. And he's requesting to change this lot to TF3 and put 3 buildings with a total of 6 units in the total 6 units, 2 in each building. And then there would be a cross access from the property to the east into this new duplex development. They would account for, on-site parking. There would be trash enclosures, that type of thing. This is something that fits in with the infill initiatives to include duplex development within single-family residential. Let's see. A site plan would have to be approved. And then just the typical, all other zoning or code requirements would have to be met. And this area is to the south is Maple Street, Central Street, and fronting Central Street is limited commercial. And then to the north is, you have a mix of mostly single-family residences, but also some duplexes. There are some new duplexes that have been built within that neighborhood, single buildings. But as I said, this is immediately adjacent to a development that this property owner has already completed with 4 buildings totaling 8 units. So staff is recommending approval of this zone change with the conditional use to allow 3 buildings on a single lot for multifamily, and upon approval of a site plan that has, connective access between the 2 developments. And the agent is here. I can answer any questions. The agent is also here to answer questions. And you have a proposed site plan attached with your staff report.
Questions from the board?
I have a question. The other property, there's been some problems in the past with the dumpster. It's right there in front and being overfilled, especially near the end of the month, with mattresses and such like that, the sink on the street. Is there any way we could, on this new one, is there going to be another dumpster for this facility? Is there any way to build some kind of fencing, maybe?
I'm going to let the agent answer that, and my question would be, on that kind of deal where they're finding mattresses and such in the dumpsters.
Yes.
Is that coming from the duplex development itself, or are people coming and dumping
That's a good
that?
question. Yeah.
So that's kinda hard. I would think that a placement of a dumpster further back into the property might solve that, but
Yeah.
then again, you have to, the trash service has to have access to get to those dumpsters.
And I don't see how a trash service could have access safely.
But, I mean, that's a concern we can mention to the property owner. But I would question as to whether that kind of trash is coming from the people living in those units. I think it's,
Because
if
there's
there's a
other
trash
apartments.
dumpster,
Yeah.
we can throw our mattress there.
Does the applicant wanna address that?
I'm Kirk Miller, 117 East Louis, the agent for the applicant. And I'm sure he'll have a dumpster out there. Not sure what it's gonna be, but
There's
we
no,
have a site plan.
yeah, is it in?
Show one here.
I don't know.
I didn't see
No,
that.
I don't.
That was just a preliminary. I think in the middle,
Did we say we're gonna do that?
yes.
We did? Okay, I guess we're gonna cross lot access. Good.
So you don't know where it's gonna go for sure?
No,
Okay.
there's not a whole lot of room on there.
Yeah.
And I don't think
No.
the trash truck would wanna go way to the back or
No.
anything, so I'm sure it'd be somewhere towards the front. We do have a proposed turnaround for the fire department, I don't know if there's enough room there, maybe to squeeze it in or not.
Understand.
Okay.
Thank
And are
you.
those trash, are they enclosed or is it just, I don't remember when I was over
I
there
don't want
looking
them
at
to
it.
enclose.
The one that you
Okay.
seen, is it enclosed?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
But
an
over.
enclosed one, and I looked at that and I agree with you, I couldn't see, well, could they put it further back? No, that wouldn't be safe, and, it's more difficult for the trash haulers, so. And I agree with Kathy, now that we talked about it, could be coming from anyone.
Yeah.
Pretty accessible spot for them.
Other questions from the board? Yeah. Bill.
Are we gonna have, garages on these duplexes?
No, I don't believe so.
No, okay. So we're gonna, what's the parking standard? We're gonna have 2-bedroom duplexes, so we gotta have how many parking spaces for 2 bedrooms?
Whatever required by code.
But no garages, so it's gonna look different than the one next door to it, that does have a single car garage with each duplex.
Are they within the building?
Yeah.
Then they may be doing that, I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with the footprint of the building.
Okay.
But Bill, normally what we've been doing on those duplexes, if they don't have a garage, then we require 2 parking spaces on the drive apron.
Yeah.
So,
Per unit?
yes.
And that's what we have shown on the sketches. Parking right up
I'm
there.
just curious about the garage.
I'll have to check, it's probably not been decided yet.
Okay.
Other questions?
So the 2 areas, will they end up being completely covered with cement and buildings? Are the complete property both properties completely covered with cement and or buildings?
No, there's grass area in there.
Okay, and is
The
it
site
more
plan shows the drive coming in and then the parking going in towards the structures. Anything outside of that would be grass area.
Okay, I didn't pick that up.
Other questions? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this case? Nope, okay, bring it back to the board. Questions or ready for a motion?
I'm motion that we approve this as recommended by staff.
Second.
Approved?
With that question.
Yeah.
Are we gonna include that the dumpster being closed was that something we were considering with the dialogue that we had, or no?
I don't, I just don't see how the dumpster could be enclosed without it being a hindrance to the trash haulers.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. 8. All right. Thank Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Deb members.
Make her stay.
It might come before planning, Kathy. You should stay.
I appreciate you putting me at the front of the meeting. Yes, thank you.
All right. Okay, our next item is yes, TNR, an ordinance that is being created, and I think Stephanie McCurdy is the chairperson of the Animal Services Advisory Board, and she is going to give us a presentation. So this is what we will do. So Stephanie will give her presentation, the board will ask their questions, and I'll open it up to the audience. How many of you tonight are here to speak on TNR? Okay, so I'll give each of you 2 minutes to speak on that, and then after that, we'll bring it back to the board for their final recommended action, okay?
Point of
Yes, yeah.
clarification. So as a board, what is our role in this? Are we accepting, is an acceptance, or is it something more than that?
So the recommendation is approval of the proposed ordinance as proposed by the Animal Services Advisory Board. So the proposed ordinance that Stephanie's going to present tonight, the Animal Advisory Board is asking this DAB board to endorse it.
To endorse it, not to approve it, but to endorse it?
Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
It says approve, but you can't really approve, right?
Right,
It's
so I want to
endorse.
make, yes.
Yeah, recommended. Well, and it's recommended approval. That, you're recommending approval. Does that make sense? Greg, sorry, I can't see you now.
I'm sorry.
I can use that language.
Yeah, recommend approval, okay.
Are you an attorney?
No, I just don't want to be hung out to dry.
Well,
we
with
al-
this group, I'm not so sure,
That's
so
right.
be careful.
And we also have legal representation from our law department, from the city's law department here tonight. So Jan Jarman is here. If we have
Thank you.
legal questions, she can help us
There's
too.
my lawyer.
So-
Yeah, she's good. She keeps me in line, man. Telling you. So, this is kind of cool because Cindy was one of our teachers in college. So, if I really sting tonight, it's because I'm a little nervous. So my name is Stephanie McCurdy, and I am now the past chair of the Animal Services Advisory Board. This board was formed in 2015, and I was brought on, and that's when I became chair of this organization. We've gone through quite a bit of changes at Wichita Animal Services. We went from Wichita Animal Control to Wichita Animal Services. So you'll see some things that you're going to probably get emails on that'll say Animal Control, Animal Services. It's the same thing. We've had that question a lot, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. In 2015, when this board was formed, the city of Wichita did a study, an online study, and one of the hot topic items was euthanasia about any animal. So over the past few years, the euthanasia rate has gotten better, but it's not perfect, and it's probably not where the city of Wichita really wants us to be. So something that is affecting that euthanasia rate is cats. So we had a committee that met for about a year and a half, trying to come up with some ordinance type things to present to the Animal Services Advisory Board, and we never really came to a conclusion of what was going to be the best thing. So the whole board took it on. So we spent 3 regular meetings and 3 extra meetings in between there discussing this particular topic. So that's why you see all these beautiful people in the room today, because these people are passionate about what's going on and this particular topic. So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about TNR. I'm going to tell you what TNR is, talk to you a little bit about the ordinance, and then you guys are going to have some questions. I'm absolutely positive of it. Okay? All right, so what is TNR? TNR is trap, neuter, and return. TNR is the method of reducing outdoor cats populations by capturing them, providing them spay and neuter services, and returning them to their environment. One question I always get is, so you spay or neuter? depending on the sex of the animal is what we do, but we just call it TNR. So TNR creates an opportunity to protect people and animals while reducing the conflict between cats and humans, as well as cats and other animals. Community-wide TNR programs are effective because they halt reproduction of existing cats through sterilization. They lead to long-term management of colonies and the eventual elimination of cat populations. We also vaccinate the cats against rabies while they're being TNR'd, and this also decreases nuisance complaints by eliminating or dramatically reducing noise from cat fighting and mating and odor, and unneutered male cats spraying urine to mark their territory. Also during TNR, this gives us the opportunity when kittens are brought in, if they're young enough to be socialized, they can be routed to adoption, or friendly adult cats that appear as ferals can also be routed through adoption as well. So this is a cute little chart about what really happens with trap and neuter in return. So we trap the cats, we transport them to a clinic, they undergo surgery and their ears are notched. That's the identifying factor that they're spayed, neutered, and vaccinated. And then they're given a few days to recover, and then they're returned to their original environment, okay? So the background on this, okay, thought I was on a different slide, sorry. The background on this is that when I talked about the community survey earlier, 20.63% of the respondents felt the feral cats were a nuisance in their neighborhoods. 64% of the respondents felt that the city should take an active role in assisting neighborhoods with the issue. And 48% felt that the most pressing issue for animal control was to reduce the euthanasia rate at the shelter. We are missing some slides. Okay. Well, I'm just going to chat a minute while there's no slide. So, as I told you, the committee put together a proposal. The proposal came through the board, and then it was presented to City Council. City Council has sent this out to the district advisory boards for some opinion. And I will tell you, we've had varying opinions on all sides. That's why all of these beautiful people are here today. And also during the same time, the police department formed an internal committee to review the ordinance and ensure the applicability and the enforceability of this ordinance. So the city of Wichita recognizes the need for innovation and addressing the issues presented by feral and free roaming cats to the end, and it recognizes that trap neuter return program is a viable option to manage and over time reduce the population of community cats, thus reducing the number of cats entering the shelter system and essentially being euthanized. The program relies on caregivers to trap free roaming cats to be spayed and neutered and vaccinated, rabies vaccinations, given the ear tip, and then returned to the location where the cat was originally found with the property owner's permission. And in a very last case, moving them to an alternate location. So just some ordinance highlights. It addresses the overpopulation of cats that we have. It creates a definition of a feral cat and a community cat and other specific subject matters to TNR. Feral cat is one that is unsocialized to humans and has a temperament of extreme fear and resistance to contact with humans. Also, a community cat means it is ear-tipped feral cat that may be cared for by a designated caregiver in the immediate area. Community cats are not domesticated. And this also gives caregiver guidelines for feeding, watering, and any type of care they may have. So something that's not going to be on the PowerPoint is the actual cat euthanasia rates at the shelter. So I brought those with me today. So in 2015, we euthanized 2,118 cats. In 2016, we euthanized 1,630. In 2017, we euthanized 1,227. And in 2018, we only euthanized 920 cats. So you notice that there's a downturn in the euthanasia rate for cats. This is part because of rescue stepping up and taking animals out of the shelter system, as well as independent programs that are already doing TNR in place. However, they're not doing it through a guided ordinance. So in 2015, one of our local organizations TNR'd 662 cats. In 2018, they TNR 1,017 cats. And in 2019, as of Monday, they've already trapped, neutered, and returned 483 cats. So the approximate amount to keep an animal at the Wichita Animal Services is about $20 to $25 a day. On average, Wichita Animal Services keeps an animal for 12 days. Three of those days are state law, and the rest are given for opportunity for either adoption and or to be put into a barn cat program or to be put back in a colony. So we have an organization here in town that's already doing TNR. So they're spaying and neutering, they're ear tipping, and they're also giving a rabies vaccine. That's costing them $10 per animal. So we're anticipating that the fee would probably stay around the same or go down with the number of cats we're anticipating bringing into the program. Some more ordinance highlights. It's mandated registration of cat colonies and annual reporting requirements, and it is applicable enforcement by Animal Services is warranted. So we do get a lot of questions. How does Animal Services still go out and do their duties every day? Well, we already have a nuisance in the ordinances. So that's 6.04010. That's the definition of nuisance. And then in 6.04040, section E12, it talks about specifics of how they're able to continue with the enforce of nuisance. So let's say that someone calls Wichita Animal Services and they have a cat complaint. So an Animal Services officer would go out on that cat complaint and they would observe what the nuisance is. Is the cat urinating somewhere? Is it going to the restroom anywhere else? Is it eating someone's plants? Has it hurt another animal? Has it hurt a person? And from there they decide what they're going to do. So that means a lot of times if an animal is doing something they don't want it to do, they talk to the cat owner and they tell them, okay, you have 30 days to come into compliance. 30 days being a whole number. So in that 30 days, it's that homeowner's responsibility to make sure that that cat is not being a nuisance, right? So they have to either retrain the cat or they have to designate that it's going to get spay and neuter services, it's going to see a vet and get vaccinated, whatever they have to do to bring that animal into compliance. So, what are the benefits of the ordinance change? This is a community-centric approach in solving the issue as opposed to government focus. So this ordinance here costs the city government nothing. So it also helps with the reduction of numbers and cats in the shelter with the ultimate goal of reducing euthanasia in regarding to cats. So also we need community buy-in because it creates other funding sources. Cat-related intake and euthanasia activities cost more than $1 billion annually in the United States. So what we've done so far is nothing. We've not helped, trap, neuter, release. The city hasn't. The only thing that we're relying on right now are community organizations to take a part in this and to actually go forward. To be able to do this on a higher scale, they have to be able to apply for grant funding, and without a TNR ordinance, the grant funding cannot be found. Communities that embrace effective cat management programs such as TNR are rewarded with goodwill from their citizens, and you have community buy-in. Large-scale sterilization programs depend on the volunteer support, and non-lethal management programs will readily be supported by the majority in our community, while lethal control will not be received with the same support. Without TNR, we stress the shelters, we overwhelm the resources that are available, which far exceeds the capacity, and it gives false expectations to citizens that coming to animal shelters for help will resolve the problem. Any questions? Everybody's like, yeah, I got a question. James.
As written, does the TNR ordinance cover any language regarding like personal liability for the community cat caregiver? Is there any liability in regards to things that like property destroyed by that particular feral cat population that they're caring for?
Currently in the ordinance, there's nothing in the ordinance about liability or anything like that, but there's also not anything in the ordinance now that speaks to liability.
Other
Yes.
questions?
Yes, I have a question, maybe a concern.
Mhm.
I talked to several jurisdictions about their TNR program. And the ones I talked to do not have a TNR ordinance.
Okay.
But they work very closely with TNR residents. I mean TNR volunteers. But at the same time, they do not have the present regulation that we have in there, that any feral cat is to be killed right now, correct? If I read that ordinance.
If an animal is brought into the shelter and it is not picked up within this certain amount of time frame, yes, it is euthanized.
So the communities that have been successful with this, for example, I reached out to Jim Ludwig in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they have an extremely successful TNR program along with a citywide effort to get, to have spay and neuter. In fact, once a month, they have a big spay and neuter event in Albuquerque. And he said they charge $15 for spay and neuter, and if you can't pay for it, then the city picks it up. And it's also, they work with a grant from PetSmart Charities to offer them a grant. Now, you had said that without an ordinance, you couldn't get a grant, but in this case, they do not have an ordinance regarding TNR. It's just supported, they've given an official support of those organizations. I wonder about which would be more successful, an ordinance or a resolution from maybe the mayor and city manager to say, hey, we can support this animal control contract to these to these different agencies to get the animals.
That would actually be a change arm question for
I
the
mean,
city.
this is, I'm just, but they don't have TNR.
I can give you a legal reason why.
Why?
We have a state statute that says you can't abandon animals. So TNR in the state of Kansas, I know cities do it, and I know from the numbers Stephanie gives, we're doing it. It's not legal. You can't just dump a cat back out in the community. We met with some folks from Oklahoma City who wondered, why don't you do it like us? Well, Oklahoma City doesn't have the same statute on abandonment. So the reason this ordinance was written was to get someone to take responsibility. The rescue groups didn't want to own them. Said that the people who take care of the cats don't want to own them. So instead we said, well, what if they agree to take care of them? Because that way we're still abiding by state law that they're caring for them. And some folks have pointed out in all these meetings we've done, well, about the damage to property. Well, when you don't own them, then who do we peg the damage? That's an excellent question. On the other hand, if they're a nuisance and the neighbors don't own them, then the city can more easily come in and take them if you don't own them. That's why this ordinance, we give you 30 days notice to fix it, and if you don't fix it, we can take them from you if they're a nuisance, and if we can prove that they're a nuisance. So I think, I'm not sure that we've delved into the detail that much, but this ordinance is definitely up and down.
Right.
There are parts that are good for community cat caregivers, and there are parts they're not gonna like very much at all, and the same for the other side. But that's why, it's our state law that, in my opinion, prohibits us from just allowing the dumping of cats.
Oh,
And I
I
cannot
see.
explain where they're going now. But,
I understand now. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Going with the nuisance, like community cat colony being deemed a nuisance. Very last part, punishment. Any violation of this section should be punishable in accordance with you make reference, is that reference, you take the cats, is that the punishment?
It could be criminal or civil taking of the cats. You could go either way or both.
But ultimately, the punishment is the cats are removed, the cat colony is removed, and then what happens? So they relocated, or they euthanized?
They'd probably be, I'd have to be honest, they'd probably be euthanized, because what we've learned through this process is, when we started this, I thought you could just take them somewhere else and give them a home somewhere else. But I've learned that they'll probably come back, which probably means if they're a nuisance, they would be euthanized.
There was actually a case, which I talked to city council about, I left it out of the presentation today, but they trapped and neutered and released about 15 cats up in the corner of the state, and they took them 3 hours away, and within a year they had 3 cats that were back on the property. And the reason why they knew that those cats belonged there because they had come all the way back to that property.
Wow.
So it was quite a ways away. If they know where their home is, they're going to go back.
How complicated or how willing are the caregivers to do some of these details that are required?
So
the record keeping.
So the organization that's currently doing the trap and neuter release, a lot of these volunteers, caregivers are here today, and you're going to hear from them, I assure you. They do this because they want to do this. So they're the ones that are feeding them, watering them. If there's an animal that's sick or injured, they're going to call someone to get that animal care, or they're going to take that animal in.
Okay.
So they're not just going to leave, they're not just going to abandon this animal that was in a colony and say, have a good time, well, I'm going to take my colony over to this part of my yard. So they're actually going to take care of that animal. And they're already doing that.
I have a question. So these people you talked about that are doing this now, are they're breaking the law then? Because she just said it's illegal to
Not necessarily.
abandon a cat?
Because you are allowed to have cats, and it doesn't matter right now if you have a feral cat or a home cat, as long as you don't exceed the number of cats, you can take care of cats. But the way the law reads right now is if you feed a cat, you own a cat.
Oh.
And so 5 people feed that cat, technically 5 people own that cat.
We're not really sure how that divvies up, but.
I had a question about, so this talks about the practicality of it when there is a caregiver. I personally live across the street from the situation. I live across from a community caregiver. There was at one point 30 cats. She's also 80, and she's not going to be caregiving the entirety of my mortgage time. So
I know a good realtor that can help you move if you really want to. I'm just saying. I'm just kidding. Keep going. Sorry.
So my question is, what happens when the caregiver goes away? The population is still there. Logic would dictate that they would advance from the property where all the food is, because they already have. They killed my chickens. So my question is, what happens when it further expands and they leave that original population? Do current ordinances, the current way of doing things, picking them up and trapping them, euthanize, or do they get relocated to a different population? What happens in that?
And real quick, I'm sorry, just for minutes' sake, are you asking what happens if a caregiver dies?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. or moves. That was very
Dies, moves.
Dies or moves. Dies or moves.
Okay. So
the population remains.
So the population is still there. So this person's still alive, right?
Yeah.
Like if not, like I want the address, we're gonna go take care of that. But if the person dies or moves, a lot of times, I mean, I've seen caregivers that will unfortunately take their colony with them. It does happen, but if the person dies under the ordinance right now, there's no one to give care to those animals. They would be, well, they would be brought to the shelter, and then they get to stay a few days, depending on how they do in the kennel. Sometimes if they're doing really poorly, we try to get them out pretty quickly, whether that be euthanasia or routing into a different program.
So just so I'm clear on the minutes, so if they die, they would be gathered and taken to the shelter. If they move, they can take their colony with them to their next location.
It has happened, but sometimes they don't take their colony.
Sometimes they just abandon them.
Yeah.
And then they would be collected.
Yes. It would be a fun time collecting 30 cats, let me just tell you.
And collecting would be probably an affirmative act on your part.
Yeah.
Under the old ordinance and the new ordinance, really, if you have a cat problem, and we've had this at some abandoned apartment complexes, it's left to the neighbors who are experiencing the nuisance. Animal control will often tell you, do you mind if we put some cats and traps on your property? And they'll come out and check them, but they also rely on you to call and say, got one. And that's now and in the future.
Yes.
Can you walk me through how one becomes a registered community cat caregiver?
So when we put together this ordinance and it came out of committee, we had not designated all of the fine tuning of this, so that's why we're here today. Because honestly, we want input. We know it's not perfect. It's not gonna be perfect. You're gonna hear a lot of input today on what people think would make the perfect ordinance, whether or not that fits for our community or not is, still kind of up in the air. But I think that the original thought was when they become a registered caregiver, they would actually have to register their colony with Animal Services. That way that there would be some type of accountability for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
As of right now, people are just saying, I'll be at the colony location?
As of right now, we don't know where they
No,
are
okay.
unless one of the organizations has gone out and actually helped them.
Okay.
So they could be all
Sure.
ends of the city and we just don't know where they are. So this would be a way for us to know where they are. So if we do get nuisance complaints,
Yeah.
we know where to track them down.
So under the community cat caregiver registration, we talked about in 4D that they can't exceed more than 8 cats, is that correct?
Mhm.
And maybe this is, I don't know. I think part of the registration, so this is my opinion, should be in consideration as approval of neighbors, or residents around the property as well. Because, with the potential, because if I remember, where does it say, because they're not allowed to go inside, correct?
No.
So they're gonna be obviously living outside, which is community.
Mhm.
So if it's a community, I believe registration should involve some of the community around that colony.
Okay.
Personally, because I think it just gives buy-in better for the registration process, which I know makes it difficult for the caregiver, because they're like, I love cats, I wanna care for cats, and, I would hate to see euthanization, so, but then you get neighbors who are going, like, we didn't want 8 cats roaming. Does that make sense? So that's kind of
I
my first thought.
understand that question
Yeah.
because we've had that asked before. But on the other side of that, so let's say that we do that. We do make them register their colony, and then all of the neighbors are like, I don't want these cats. Okay, so then what happens? They get picked up and euthanized, right?
Sure.
Or this caregiver that's currently doing this knows that his or her neighbors aren't going to allow that, and what do they not do?
Yeah,
They don't register.
Yeah.
And then we can't identify the colony. I'm just giving you the flip side
Yeah.
for
No,
both sides, because I think
totally
that
get
you
it.
have a valid point.
Yeah, and that's why I think, if we're gonna call them community cats, I think community input is important for the colony.
Man, that's why I'm here. This is like my
Yeah.
5th meeting.
God bless you. A couple other questions. You had mentioned, when it comes back to returning them back to the same place, is the desired thing, but you mentioned alternate location was the last choice. And that's because of the return coming back. And I apologize, I did some reading. There was a couple, it was out east, Ohio, Indiana, I believe. Don't quote me on this, so I don't. But what I was seeing was that there was a TNR deal that they were actually working on a state level to be able to, if I remember right, or maybe it was a wide county level, but allowing cats to actually be used at, farmers to actually obtain cats as well as a colony.
Yeah.
My parents live on 20 acres up in Riley County, and you know, that's what
That's why you're wearing that ugly K-State shirt.
It's not ugly, it's God's theme, so, I mean, it's purple, so color of royalty, so, no, yeah, so I'm definitely blue purple, but that's what they did, is they ended up getting a couple cats from the community, and, you know, they had a roaming Tom, and they've had many kids.
So the
since
awesome
then.
thing about what
But
you
they've been
just said.
awesome Mausers for them, and they've
Great.
been amazing for the community, and they're more out, and they're still in Manhattan, but they are more rural,
Mhm.
but they've seen that actually be a positive thing for, you know, because when they start, you know, harvesting, you know, those field
Oh
mice
yeah, they
running
come right
around.
out.
Yep.
So the awesome thing about what you just said is the Kansas Humane Society, who Wichita Animal Services shares the campus with, they have what's called the barn cat program, which is exactly what you just
Okay.
described.
Cool.
So a lot of times when community cats are picked up, they obviously can't be transferred to an adoptive family because
Sure.
they're feral. So they go to a barn home. And so we do transfer a lot of cats out
Do
to
you?
barn homes
Okay.
throughout Sudbury County.
And then the last thing you said, this isn't gonna cost the city anything.
Nope.
So what happens when grant money runs out and these organizations aren't capable to perform TNR?
So right now, these organizations are doing this, and they did about a little over 1,000 last year, which they're already getting community funding. So private people are donating, and the more successful a program is, we know that people probably will donate more. So
Okay.
even if they get a grant, let's say they get a $10,000 grant from
Yeah.
Petco Charities, you know, once they use the 10,000, then they would go back to using their regular
So,
funding as
so the
well.
community or I guess the grant would almost be a subsidy for,
It's just like an extra blessing.
yeah, if that makes
Yes.
sense. Thank you.
So if this ordinance doesn't pass, what's your biggest concern? What would be your biggest concern that would happen less or more if the ordinance doesn't pass?
Do you want my personal opinion, or do you want the board's opinion, or both?
I want to hear both.
Okay, so my personal opinion is, I feel like that we're gonna continue to have a cat problem. I mean, organizations can only do so much by themselves without help, right? So if we're not giving them the roadmap with an ordinance to be able to go out and get some, you know, substantial funding, they just keep limping along, right? So with that, if they're able to TNR more cats, the overall goal is to reduce the cat population, and eventually it's gone. So that we don't have community cats anymore. That's the overall goal. And I think that the board also feels that way as well, that they would like to see some type of TNR put into place. However, like I said, our board feels like it's not perfect. That's why we're here, to get input. Yes?
Do you see this as, from what I've read, that TNR works if there's also an aggressive spay-neuter program in the city? Do you envision that happening with animal control or with people?
Yes, so we already have a mandatory spay and neuter for pit bulls in the city limits. And so that is helping to increase the population currently. The next thing is if we do mandatory spay and neuter all of Wichita, yeah, it helps and it does decrease that population, but you're still gonna have breeders that are gonna have those animals as well, because they can get their licensing from the state. Yes.
And one other thing, a question, said animal services shall maintain records. Did I overlook it, that the neutering, spay and neutering, they would not be part of their records? In here, it says number 8, animal services shall maintain records including number of cats entering the shelter, number of ear-tipped cats trapped by officers or brought into the shelter, number of ear-tipped cats reclaimed, returned to their trapping location.
For Brandon.
It's number 8. With reasons for euthanasia and number of cat nuisance complaints. Could the number of spay and neuter be collected? Because you could compare the reduction of the number of intakes to the number of animals that are being spayed and neutered. And there can be a correlation.
I can't answer that for Wichita Animal Services, and they're not here tonight. However, we use a software program that tracks all of the numbers of what type of animal comes in the facility,
the approximate age, gender, all of that stuff. I would be willing to bet there's probably an option, like one of those check boxes, that then we get like an X, we can check it if it's spayed
Yeah.
neutered. But a lot of times sometimes animals come in that are not marked, so we
Right.
don't know if they're spayed or neutered. Yeah.
It says here that the caregivers shall not allow a community cat into the living area of their home and dwelling. Does that mean that they're not supposed to domesticate if they can?
There's kind of two sides to that. We do know that a feral cat, you're not supposed to be able to touch them, handle them, anything of that sort. Now, as some of these caregivers will tell you, over time, they will start to trust you because guess what? They're the ones giving them the food and the water and putting out boxes in the winter for them that they can, get warm in and stuff like that. So there are situations that do arise where that can happen, but majority of them will stay completely feral and you will not be able to get near them. That's why we trap them. Otherwise, we would just walk in and scoop them up and take them to the shelter. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I wish it did, but it didn't.
I can also tell you why that sentence was written. I used to prosecute before I worked in the law department. People are wily when they're charged with crimes, and they will claim that we try to make it to where if you have outdoor feral cats, you can still keep your own indoor cats, but people will claim that one is the other. So you have to say, if you're gonna have indoor cats, you can't be counting those outdoor, otherwise they're gonna have twice as many cats as we want them to have. So that was a prosecution tool so people with feral cats can still own their own cats and then not claim it when they go to court and we say you have too many cats.
The reason I ask is I live behind an apartment complex, and they tend to abandon their cats when they move. Cats get all excited and they don't want to be put in the box in the car and all of this stuff, well, they just leave them. Well, they're not feral, but they have no owners. And they are afraid that after a while they become tame because they trust you. So what?
I guess I'm not really understanding the question.
Well, you can't treat them like, you can't bring them into the house.
Right.
Because they're feral, but they're not, they weren't raised, they were raised as a domesticated cat, but they were abandoned, so.
I think we're dealing with two separate issues here. We're dealing with abandonment, number one.
Right.
And a lot of times if we get a call like that, we will come out and set up, someone will go out and set a trap to get that animal to the shelter. And then if it has been a domesticated animal, we do, in the shelter, we do behavior testing. So you would recognize that it has been touched, it's been, fed, things like that. Now, they do act a little different in the shelter, and that's a discussion for another day. But most of the time, that we can differentiate between if it's a true feral, where they cannot even, to put their hand in the kennel to, change their newspaper.
So it's pretty much taken into consideration.
Yeah. I am so sorry, I'm just screaming right over your head.
You're good.
At least I'm not spitting.
I feel it if you do.
I know, right? It'd be real cute, right? Yes.
So the communication piece that you're presenting this evening is excellent. But for the general population, what is the communication piece that's going to be put together?
That is an awesome question because I know that I personally believe that everything is successful based on an education level. And that means that we have to do our due diligence and we have to educate the public and the population of the city of Wichita. Mm-hmm. So without that, this isn't going to be successful.
So is that coming before the ordinance approval or after the ordinance approval?
So once there's ordinance approval, then there would be, press releases that would go out. They would explain these things. There'll be a lot of talking points. I know, let me give you an example. When USPS came to Wichita Animal Services and asked for some help with some mail carriers that had been bitten, they did a really great job with a media campaign on they sent out mail to these people. They left door hangers. We had public organizations that left door hangers. So it's our responsibility as a community to help promote that as well.
Yep.
So that's where we rely on city council to talk about it. We rely on, we want the DABs to talk about it, talk to it about your neighbors, and then also with the media as well.
So will there be an on-purpose communication program that city council is going to be recommended to take on, or to promote, or pay for?
I would absolutely hope that the city of Wichita would do something of that magnitude. I think that that would be great, and that would definitely help a program, any program for that matter, be successful.
This one is becoming very personalized. It's not necessarily like a ballpark and some little scrap of land on the side. People take it personally because it's in their front yards.
Oh,
So
honey,
that's-
you have really no idea. Absolutely.
Comes a lot of my sour grapes.
No, and I'll be honest with you, I don't own a cat. I don't have a cat colony in my neighborhood that I know of. I mean, I'm allergic to cats, like deathly allergic to cats. Like I sneeze and get that like red thing. It's awful. But we have to do something because we're currently not doing anything, and we're still in the same boat we were 30 to 50 years ago.
Thank you.
Is there a projection of just the reduction of euthanization if TNR gets implemented?
You know, I would love to be able to stand here and tell you that, like, we would euthanasia would go away. I would love that. I think everybody would, for that matter, because it's kind of the natural progression of life. Because a cat in a colony, their lifespan is not like Fluffy's that's living indoors, that's seeing a regular veterinarian every year, things like that. I would love to be able to give you those numbers. We just don't have them because we really don't know how many cats are here.
Sure.
We have no accountability because we have no registry.
Yeah, I was really impressed. There was an email that one of the many emails that we received in the last couple of weeks.
Awesome, right?
But it was the statistics from the last 9 years is about 15,000 cats that have been put down, and it cost taxpayers $2.5 million, and so roughly. And so I was just curious to know, with an ordinance coming in like that, how much less of taxpayer money will we be using for euthanization?
Well, I would absolutely love to tell you that we would never be able to, we wouldn't have to have the incinerator anymore.
Sure.
We wouldn't have to run that 3 times a week. I would love to tell you that. Because that's costly. Just like animal services, are people working there and feeding them and watering them and, taking care of their kennels. I would love to be able to tell you that. But there is going to be cost savings.
Yeah.
It's just a natural progression of that.
So if I remember right too, the numbers are all blurring together, but there was estimated cost was like $170 for utilization or something like that. What's it costing the organizations now? You gave some numbers earlier, but remind me again what it's costing to currently implement TNR.
So I think the number that you're referring to is the approximate to keep the animal and then essentially euthanize. So it's $20 to $25. That takes into account food, manpower, building, all of that stuff. Okay? And then on an average, we keep an animal 12 days on an average. So you take that $20 time, that's the number you're probably talking about.
Okay.
I can't calculate that in my head,
Well,
but
I mean, you mentioned 25 earlier, and at 12 days, we're looking at $500. So do the math on that. We're looking at
and some animals are less. I mean, it just
400 and something.
yeah, and it just depends.
Okay.
There's a lot of contributing factors as to how long the animal stays in the shelter.
Well, Stephanie, I think for the minutes purposes, I think if I'm hearing you right, Matt, what you're trying to say is you asked what it costs for it to be in the shelter at 20 to 25 a day times up to 12 days in comparison to what TNR's cost is. Can you give us a TNR cost?
The organization that's doing it at a high level right now, it's $10 per cat to TNR the cat.
And how long do they keep the cat in that process?
I believe it's 3 days. Let me double check. 2
2 days.
2
Okay.
days.
Yes.
I had to make sure I don't want to misspeak on their behalf.
Yep, you're good.
I'm sorry, I've just got to
Go
make sure this is all straight. So, to TNR a cat, trap, neuter, release, it's $10 for the procedure, and then the cat's kept for 2 days. And what's the cost of the keeping of the cat? So I can have an equal comparison for keeping of cats.
Doesn't cost the city anything.
Yeah,
Okay, at no cost to the city.
yeah. And that $10 is at no cost to the city already.
Okay.
So the only thing that the city's paying for is to keep the animal if it doesn't get TNR'd, and then essentially to euthanize it.
Okay.
All right, anything else? All right, I'm gonna take it out to the audience. As I said earlier, we'll give each person 2 minutes, so if you'll come. What's that? Yeah. Thank you. If you'll come forward to the end of the table, state your name and your address, and we'll take those.
Do you
So
want us to go row by row, or how do you want to do that in an orderly fashion?
I don't care how you line up. You can, we usually just line up and. Yeah, that's a good point. So if it would be best if someone's already made your points, not to repeat those points, because the DAB understands what those are. So if you have new points, that would be great. So, all right?
And folks, just a reminder, you need to give me your name. If it's a difficult name, please spell it, and your address.
Francine Guyette, Guyette, 525 North Richmond. I am a colony caregiver. I take care of the fallen feral cats that were there when I moved in, and many more that have come in. But the majority of the cats have now been, I hate to do this to you, the majority of the ones that I started with have been tamed. They are in permanent, in-home only residence with families. Depends on how young they get trapped. I am down to 7 cats in my colony. They don't leave my backyard. They get fed twice a day. They have heated care in the winter. They have heated water in the winter. They have, believe me, I've spent my share for vets. They can be retrapped if they are injured. It's not easy, but it can be done, so that they can get the help they need. I am not a cat hoarder. I do not want any more cats. My cats are dying off naturally now of old age. The difference with the feral cat colony caregiver than a hoarder is a hoarder wants to feed everybody else's cats, every animal they can find. We're not like that. We want these cats to be spayed, neutered, vaccinated, and given a home and somebody that will care for them. My whole neighborhood, thank goodness, all got on board and we did this together. So we don't have the bad smell, we don't have, and my neighbor's got 20 bird feeders and never have we found feathers. So, and he's got a dog, a little wiener dog. So, cat colonies can be maintained. Not all of them are vicious anymore. Matter of fact, I can pet almost most of mine. They all come gather up, feed the dog. But I have not had any neighbor complaints in my neighborhood. But like I said, we did it together. And I hope they take this into consideration.
Thank you, Francine.
Hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Gingrich. I'm a local veterinarian.
Dr. Gingrich, your address, please.
Oh, yes, sorry. And it also is Guengerich.
Okay, sorry. Let me redo that because I would have had that wrong.
Guen.
Guen.
Gerich.
Thank you. And your address, please.
1262 South Pin Oak Court.
Thank you.
So I actually volunteer for the local group that does TNR. I volunteer my spare time to do surgery on these pets. Cats, they're not pets. So I've devoted my life to the care of animal health, and I support TNR. Killing cats is not the answer. I realize that many people do not like having stray animals in their neighborhood.
However, we must remember that these animals did not choose to be there. They are there because people fail to provide appropriate care for them, including spaying and neutering them. If stray cats are killed, more will replace them because we have an endless cycle of reproduction. If we trap, neuter, and return and vaccinate these cats, we allow for public protection of health with the rabies vaccine and population attrition. We can humanely manage these populations.
Thank you. Next.
Teresa Burks, 11825 East
Man, if you
Third
could just
Street.
hold on. I gotta finish what she said real
Is
quick.
that my timer? No.
We'll restart it. We can, okay, go ahead, Teresa. Say it.
Dr. Teresa Burks, 11825 East Third Street North. I am the mayor's person on the Wichita Animal Control Advisory Board. I've been there since the beginning, so I've kind of got a little detailed information on this. So my oath that Sarah took as well is to prevent animal suffering and to benefit society. So when vaccine for rabies is not adequate, they need to be boosted in a year, and then that rabies needs to be monitored in order to know which animal is vaccinated, when they have to be microchipped, because you tell me which black cat is which black cat. The other problem is rabies is not the only concern. These guys carry roundworms. Roundworms can infect children when they're playing in the dirt, and they can cause blindness in children, which is not a cool thing. Talk to your optometrist about that. On top of that, they carry ringworm toxoplasmosis. If some young lady is pregnant and she's out gardening in her garden and she doesn't wear gloves, or she's wearing gloves and she's hot and sweaty and she rubs her face, she can get toxoplasmosis cysts, and those can kill her baby. That's a concern. We also have hookworms, roundworms, cat scratch disease, Campylobacter. The CDC, the rabies compendium explains that. The Dr. Pete Morris of the Smithsonian Conservative Biology Institute says cats are the top threat of U.S. wildlife, and the extinction have been caused the extinction of 32 species of birds. Albuquerque has a budget of $1 to $1.5 million, so about 5 to 10 times what we have in Wichita for animal control, despite being the same size as city. We looked at that when we were looking at the animal bites. When we looked at the committee that did the TNR, it was a very biased committee. The only person on that committee that was a homeowner that had problems with that was bullied, been pretty much off the committee, and was not allowed to speak her piece. I think we have some other people to talk about others, and I'm talking really fast, and it's because TNR is a good thing, and TNR can be a good thing. This ordinance, as it is a horrible sketch that does not outline the details that we need to protect not only the animals from suffering, but also the people. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question.
Can I have your notes?
Yes,
So, are you for this ordinance or are you against it?
I'm against it as it is now.
Okay.
It does not have the information that we need in it now. Everybody on the block can have 8 cats. I would hate to be the one person on that block that was allergic to cats. I don't have a homeowners association to prevent me from doing that. And then also, obviously, 10 houses on a block, that's 80 cats.
Thank you.
If you'd like me to put those in the minutes, you can give them to me. I couldn't
Oh,
couldn't keep up with you.
I would be happy to email. If you can read my writing and my sketching, good luck.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Next.
All right, my name is Maria Acosta. My address is 1913 East Wassel. When we moved into our house 2 years ago, the mama cat had just given birth under our front window of 4 babies. Last summer, exactly 1 year later, one of those cats gave birth under our front window to 2 babies. So last summer, I had Friends of Felines come and take 10 cats between 4 houses in my neighborhood out, TNR'd them, and brought them back. In 2 years' time, 2 new members have showed up. One of them is one of those babies from last summer, and I'm gonna get him. And another one is a big orange fuzzy one that just showed up. I believe he came from the neighbor's 5 houses down when they moved out. These are living, breathing creatures. They have a heart, they have blood, they're warm, just like you. They're not disposable. 2 of my cats that I own personally came from outside. They have been tamed. They're the best cats I've ever had. I've spent over $2,000 in the last 2 years on several of these cats out of my own pocket, because that's what you do.
We were put here to take care of these animals, not destroy them, not treat them like an inconvenience. They're not disposable. If this was a bunch of dogs we were having problems with, this whole conversation would be a lot different. They deserve to be taken care of. And if this is how it has to be done, then let's do that.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Steve Robinson. My address is 9235 East Lake Point Drive. I know the city has a lawyer here. I'm also a lawyer. I've been practicing for 44 years. I want to tell you why this is a fatally flawed ordinance. There are a number of reasons. Number one, the current ordinance flies in the face of this ordinance. For years, the current city ordinance, and you can look it up when you get home, you can Google City of Wichita Municipal Code, it's section 6.04.025. Quote, abandoned cats located within the corporate limits of the city are declared a nuisance and a menace to the public health, which is to be abated by the Wichita Police Department. It's a menace and a nuisance, and they have been that way for years. They are dangerous, like the veterinarian says. And they are declared a nuisance. The proposed ordinance defines public nuisance means any repeated acts of nuisance. Now, right now, a feral cat by itself is a nuisance. If this ordinance is passed, it will take repeated acts. And I don't know if repeated means 2 or 12 or someplace in between. But if someone can prove that this cat or this colony has repeated acts of nuisance, who is responsible? On section C3, it's quite clear it's not the community caregiver. They're specifically exempted from liability. Stephanie said there's no liability for owners. Yes, there is. If your dog bites somebody, if your cat tears up a yard, you are responsible. So if these cats, colonies, become a nuisance, even repeated nuisances, no one is responsible. Nobody. You go to the caregiver and they say, don't look at me. The ordinance also provides you can have up to 8 cats. You will notice the ordinance has no restriction on how many people can have 8 cats. Every adult in Wichita can have 8 feral cats. That's a lot of cats. And maybe the worst thing about it is to register does not require notification to neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next.
My name is Linda Constable, and I live at 19 North Sandpiper Circle. And I'm opposed to this ordinance, but what I really want to comment on is the presentation, presentation's representation of the survey. And I have a couple of copies of this to give you. And what I'm concerned about is that the implication is that the community actually supports TNR. This survey is 12 questions that were intended to ask, what issues should the Animal Advisory Board consider? What should we think about? And it does not ever even mention the TNR program, much less say we approve it. So the survey itself does not have any benefit in terms of saying what the community would say about this. And I personally think the community would be extremely opposed. I don't have any cat colony in my neighborhood, but I would be very upset if I had a bunch of neighbors that have 8 cats roaming loose over my property, destroying things, and I can't even afford anyone liable. I have dogs. My dogs are in a fenced area on my property, and if they're out of my property, they're on a leash. I understand I have liability, and my dogs are licensed. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do. I'm somewhat outraged that the city might let people in my neighborhood have 8 cats roaming in on my property with no recourse in terms of if they damage them.
Thank you. Next.
I'm giving it my all, folks. I'm giving it my all. Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Teddy McCullough, and I live at 833 Litchfield, and I wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but I'm very opposed to this ordinance as well. I don't dislike cats. I've been a cat owner myself. I now own 2 dogs. I take care of my dogs. They stay in my yard. I vaccinate them. I feed them. I clean up after them. Community cats, who cleans up after them? No one. So what's gonna happen to all that poo? It's just going to be wherever. 80 cats on a block? Imagine the mess. My husband and I have spent over $2,500 on shade gardens in our yard. We have a beehive in the back of our property, and we raise bees. I'm not a bit interested in cats coming over into the shade garden that we have created and turn it into a giant litter box. What recourse would I have? That it's my responsibility to take care of a cat that I don't even want and take it to the shelter because the community cat person is not liable and isn't taking care of it. I don't think it's fair to ask myself or other people on the block that don't want the community cats, and I appreciated your question very much. Yeah, go around and talk to your neighbors and see what they want. I can't imagine too many people want 8 cats roaming around, distracting their dogs, harming their pets, whatever might happen. I did speak at length to a senior animal cruelty investigator for the Dumb Friends League in Colorado. And he says it boils down to care, custody, control, and possession. If you take care of a cat, if you feed a cat, you should have to vaccinate the cat, you should take care of the cat every year to the vet, and once you possess that cat, then you should be responsible for the damage that it creates for your neighbors. When you begin feeding cats, the food also goes to skunks, raccoons, and the more you do to other animals, the less likely they are to take care of themselves once you start feeding them.
Thank you, Teddy. Thank you.
The first cat showed up.
Mary Cole, Mary, what's your address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know who you are, but what's your
Mary
address?
Cole, 25 North Somerset Avenue.
Thank you.
The first cat showed up at my house before I went to California for the winter in January of 2004. No, 2004. And when I came home several months later, the cat was still there. So I don't know who cared for it while I was gone, but you know, I started putting food out and water, and I made mistakes. And that cat got pregnant, and she had several kittens, but they didn't show up, you know, until I saw them follow her. So they were feral cats, and that wasn't the only mistake I made. But anyway, by the roughly 2007, I had 12 cats, most of them feral. It has decreased ever since then. I'm down to my last cat, which is this summer sometime will be 14 years old. The ferals, except for one, I've never been able to touch. I emailed you folks, and I spoke briefly at another meeting about my problem with the neighbors' pit bulls that are not following the ordinance regarding pit bulls. Plus, they're leashed on chains less than 10 feet long, 8 to 12 hours of time when they're out, and most often without water. And I feel like I've not been able to report them, because then he can report me. I'm down to my last feral. 2 neighbors moved away in the last 7 years, one 7 years and one 2.5 years ago. The one that left their cat 7 years ago, I took it to the humane society to be fixed myself, and it always ate at my house. The other one 2.5 years ago they moved, they just left their cat. So those cats come and eat at my house, and then there's a cat that stays at my house besides the feral all the time. And I can tell you, these cats have been my family, but I've been hesitant.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks,
And I
Mary.
just think a lot of misinformation has been given here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, 2 minutes is not long enough.
To go home.
Eric Miller, 952 Fulton.
I'm sorry, 952 what?
Faulkner.
Thank you.
Well, KNER. So a couple things. You heard a lot of people talk today. A lot of the issues we're talking about are things that are happening right now. Okay, complaints, all of that, that's happening right now. These cats are a result of people abandoning them, and then these abandoned cats having kittens. Right, so that's what's happening right now. It's all happening now, and this is what we're trying to deal with. Something that I think I've learned as an engineer is data leads to solutions. Okay, so by implementing something that allows us to start gathering data, we are going to be able to look for the solution, see what works, see what doesn't work. This is one thing that I think we can start doing. I think we need to legitimize TNR. I think that's what's being asked for, so that these volunteers can go out and do this. So we talked about the 1,000 cats that were done last year. So what would have happened to these 1,000 cats if they weren't captured and spayed and neutered? Well, they would be producing more kittens, right? What would happen, we talk about vaccination, not doing anything. Well, these 1,000 cats, if they aren't vaccinated at all, they don't have that first shot, I can guarantee that they're not going to be protected from anything. So the other thing I keep hearing is they seem to think we're going to have 80 cats showing up in a neighborhood. Right now, these cats are already out there. They're out there because people are dumping cats, they're abandoning cats, they're having babies. Okay, this organization is trying to gather these animals, get them spayed and neutered, and stop the growth. We had a biologist talk to one of the other ones, and he talked about what it would take to bring the population down. And after he went through all the numbers of how many cats and how many are home and how many are feral and how many you need to capture, he said, I think he said 3,500 a year. You have to spay 3,500 females a year in order to make an impact on the estimated population from his numbers in this city. So there are goals that we could set for the program that we can try and support.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hillary Clark, 4141 South Seneca Street. I'm going to follow up maybe on something that you just said there about the number of feral cats that would need to be spayed in order to successfully reduce the population. I think that's exactly what the purpose of an ordinance such as this is, to, like you're saying, legitimize the effort and get the funding that these groups would need in order to be able to reach those goals and in order to be successful. I think overall the tone of tonight has been really good. I appreciate that a lot of tonight has been focused on the ordinance itself and less on kind of personal attacks against TNR, and I think that's been awesome. I'm a really big advocate of TNR myself, and I guess I don't know how all these people in the audience feel, although I can definitely tell how some feel. So I guess in case there are any misconceptions about TNR, I was hoping to address them. First, TNR has been shown to work. There have been research done in Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, California, New Jersey, Chicago, and even other countries like Italy and South Africa. Case studies have found that TNR does successfully work to reduce colony size. I keep saying it doesn't bring cats where there are not already cats. The cats are already there. What TNR does is make sure that they're vaccinated, make sure they get their rabies vaccines, make sure that they have fewer behavioral problems, and make sure they're not able to reproduce and keep growing the colony size. If people are worried about cats being a nuisance or a threat to public health or about any other problems, I know people are concerned about birds and other animal populations, that's exactly what TNR exists for. It exists to reduce the cat population so that fewer of these problems happen. And so for all of these reasons, the majority of animal welfare organizations, veterinary groups, schools of veterinary medicine, animal care and control organizations, as well as the American Bar Association, they all support TNR ordinances because they have been shown to be helpful and because they work. So if after hearing all of this, you're still against TNR, I'd just like to ask what you'd like the alternative to be.
Thank you.
Your name, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Sherilyn Moore, S-H-E-R-L-Y-N, Moore, and I'm in Andover. Do you need the P.O. box?
Nah.
Okay, all right. I run Country Cats Rescue, and I've been trapping, doing TNR for 20 years. I have tried to help as many people as I can. Obviously, I can't do a whole lot because I'm an individual and I have a job and I also have my own rescue. But what I try to do is educate people. Being a very small group, I get a ton of calls, even being a very small rescue, about, hey, I've got these cats, what do I do? Okay, a lot of people don't know what to do, they need education. I think with this ordinance and putting it out there, I think it would help to educate people, saying here's what resources are available for you, here's how much it will cost, but if you can't afford that, there's other options available for you. That's the main thing, is that most of the people that have the cats are low income. They have all these cats running around, they don't know what to do, they don't mind the cats being there, but they don't want all of these cats. So I think we've got to start somewhere in this town, people. I mean, I've been here 20 years and the numbers are getting better. Why are they getting better? It's because people are spaying and neutering the feral cats. People don't just go out and get cats and bring them to their home and let them stay out there in their yard. These cats are cats that are already here that we're trying to stop the population. Okay, that's the goal. And if we don't do something in this town, it's not going to get better. And all these organizations, we're working our tails off day and night, trust me, spending our own money to do all of this. And we need more people and more groups to help with this, and we'll get better results, okay? So I think we've got to start somewhere. We've got to, you know, the city of Wichita has to say, hey, we support this. It's not exactly perfect, but we've got to do something. Otherwise, you're not going to see the results that
Thank you.
that we need to see.
Thank you. How many more people want to speak? Okay, could we get you to get in line so I kind of have a sense? Okay, so if you get in line, if you don't get in line, we're finished, okay? So let's line up so I know how many more we have.
Do I have enough paper for all this?
Yeah. Okay, so that's everybody? All right.
Hey, my name is Kevin Barnes. I live at 2707 South Hillside.
Kevin Barnes, you said?
Kevin Barnes, right. I purchased a house in Valley Center that came with 2 nursing females and a male. Friends of Felines came to my aid. I worked with them for a while, and then I started freelancing. And over a period of 6 years, I helped TNR 1,200 cats for different caregivers. And I would get back with some of those people that I helped in the early days. They would tell me that attrition has reduced the numbers of their cats. The concern about who's cleaning up after the cats, the feces, a lot of the caregivers do that. But nobody's cleaning up after the squirrels, or the raccoons, or the rabbits, or the possums, or the skunks. And if a caregiver that feeds the cats is responsible, then why are people who feed birds not responsible? Why are they not cleaning up the neighbors' cars? I think that's something that seriously needs to be taken into consideration to put this into perspective. I would encourage anybody to go to Alley Cat Allies. That's one of the premier groups that supports TNR, and they can give you a lot of factual information. The one concern I have about your ordinance, which the ordinance at least is a place to start, because I've spoken at several other councils, and they wind up doing nothing, so nothing happens to improve the situation. But if you are going to have an ordinance where you have people that they have to get the approval of neighbors, I'd like to make sure that you get the approval of the majority of the neighbors and not allow one hater to prevent all the others from approving it. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Give me just a second.
Look at his hat.
Oh, give me just a second.
It's funny that Wildcat is doing.
Start your time.
Yeah.
I don't time any.
He might not even know that.
All right, Richard, I got you. What's your address?
Oh, yeah, 3907 East Funston Street. So I want to just remind everybody that tonight we are talking about the proposal that is set before you, not the merits of TNR, but the proposal, the wording of the proposal, and how it's, the guidelines it provides for both the community and the caretakers. I want to draw your attention to 5 words in section 2A, with the property owner's permission. Last Saturday, I went to the Keystone Apartments, and I have photographs of ear-tipped TNR cats running without a caregiver. And that's because some group who TNR'd them returned them to a renter in those apartments. And those they are not allowed to have companion animals according to the lease. We asked the owner of those apartments, and they said, no, I do not want them here. So now those cats are running around in a parking lot, they're eating out of dumpsters, they're living underneath in the basements and in the crawl spaces. The reason why I've been so strident for oversight, accountability, and transparency is because it's the cats that need to be cared for. You have to be able to identify the cats. That's why you need a microchip. I got an email today from a microchip producer. They said they could get it down to $3.50 for a microchip. The Humane Society of the United States have been begging TNR groups to collect data. They say, we know it works, but you've got to collect the data. This ordinance does not require the collection of data. The data that they have outlined here is summary data. It's not meaningful. You must have detailed data about your operation if you're going to improve. You must say no to this ordinance. It is incomplete, as Mr. Purdy said. It's not finished. She's looking for help, for insight. This is not the time to do that. 4 years ago, when this kicked off, was the time to do this. We need to get more people to the table. I know there are people here. This woman here is a very reputable caretaker. I heard about your colony from a gentleman that you spoke to on the plane. There are people that are doing it right. There are also people that are doing it wrong, as my visit to Keystone showed. We cannot legitimize that effort with this proposal. We must have oversight, accountability, transparency, and microchips.
Thank you.
Thank
It is
you.
affordable.
Thanks, Richard.
Yes, sir. Your name. What's your name, sir?
Carl Harold,
Address, sir.
2020 North Amarado,
Thank you.
and I have allergies. One lady, and these caregivers, they should be blessed. They work hard, their heart's in the right place. But an article I read, and it was just online, I looked up feral cat programs, and the one in Florida, they're saying that they have to have a 70 to 75% capture rate of feral cats, or the population's not going down. Also, I think you mentioned earlier at one of the other meetings that somebody tossed out a number that there's 100,000 feral cats in Wichita. We're not gonna get 75,000.
I didn't say 100, I don't know who said that, but I didn't.
Okay. And I have a question. You contacted Albuquerque, and even though they don't have an official TNR ordinance, their groups are getting grant money? Well, why can't we?
They have I think they have a memorandum of understanding, if I'm not mistaken.
And what does that mean?
That means that there's an understanding between the citizens, the city, and the animal control, and they allow them to continue to TNR.
And they also have a mandatory spay.
Okay, and I know there were a couple of lawsuits. I don't know how they came out, but two people in different parts of the city sued the city of Albuquerque over feral cats. I don't know how that came out. I don't know if you heard anything about it or not. Okay.
What reason?
I couldn't find out. But it said they were suing over the TNR. That's all it said. But again, that was online. There should be some way to find out. So I don't think anybody's totally opposed to TNR. It's got to have some responsibility. It's got to have some transparency. And if this is turned down and goes back to the board, they can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
I just want to know.
Okay.
How many people are here actually live in District 6? Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Your name, ma'am?
I'm Amanda Hanson.
And your address, please?
I'm gonna respectfully decline to give an address publicly.
We don't publicly
But I
put it
can
in.
give it to you after.
That's fine.
Okay. I just wanna speak to.
And just folks, just so you know, I don't mean to eat your time. We're not going to put your address anything public. Okay, it's just so we know who you are.
It's on the minute.
Oh, you were doing Facebook.
Oh, yeah, now it's on Facebook.
Well, your addresses are all public, folks. Sorry.
This is the first time.
This is the first time we've ever done Facebook, so
right.
oof. Go ahead, and we'll give you more time. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just need to protect the cats I care for because I really care about them quite a lot. I moved into an apartment complex, and what I found there was a lot of cats running around. Nobody's taking care of them. Those cats were destroying property. They were tearing up the trash, creating a really big mess for everybody to clean up. I went to the management of my apartment complex. I actually worked with the management and convinced them that this is a program that actually does work. I contacted Friends of Felines. I said, hey, I need some help here. I don't know what to do. They actually came out to my apartment complex and trapped every last cat. I know every cat there. I take good care of them. If they get sick, I will care for them. There are situations when a cat needs to be inside. One, for instance, got his tail cut off in a car engine, needed care inside until he could go back outside again. So that would be an issue there. Speaking to abandonment, yes, it does happen. It happens a lot in apartment complexes. I find those cats before bad things happen to them. I get them what they need so that they don't start causing more problems. I think that TNR is great. I think it does something instead of nothing. Friends of Felines is a very, very dedicated organization. People I've met are amazing. They work so hard and they give so much of themselves. I think we need to actually congratulate them. I think the city owes them a great debt of gratitude for all the work they've put into this. They really, really care about what they're doing. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, give me just a second, Cheryl.
That's what the C does.
Okay, don't worry about giving your address. Go ahead.
We have it on the sign-in sheet, so.
I'm always in connection with the group in Topeka. They've had their ordinance for about 10 years now, I believe. And in talking with the gals that run the program there, these are some of their stats. In the first 2 years, they had a 28% reduction in cat and kitten intake numbers. They have an even higher percentage of that now, but you didn't have them all cranked out.
So 28%?
28%.
And I'm sorry,
First 2 years.
and this is what community?
From Topeka Community
Topeka,
Cafes.
thank you, okay.
They do the same thing, they do the TNR program in Topeka. Then what they also get is they get a reduced neglect calls to animal control, but they don't keep good, she says they don't keep good data on it unless there's an injury. So it's kind of anecdotal. But I can tell you that our ACOs are our biggest fans. They pass out literature to folks about TNR and even asked us to provide community relations training for them, which we have done in the past. We have taught some people how to trap their own cats, and they do it on their own. The animal control are such believers in TNR now that they have completely discontinued setting traps for nuisance calls. They give folks the option of either renting a trap from them for $85 or calling their group. They know better than anyone that catch and kill doesn't work. Now, on an individual basis, that's how we work. We work off of applications from our website. So we know who we're dealing with. We know their feeding times, we know when they're about to trap, and it is working. It's working on an individual basis. What we wanted is citywide. We want to get the rest of them. You gotta make it less regulated in order to get those people to comply. Thank you.
Cheryl, I have yeah, go ahead. This isn't part of her time. Go ahead, Denise, and then I'll ask.
Does Topeka have a TNR
Ordinance? Yes, they do.
Thank you.
And just so you know, Cheryl's the president of Friends of Feline.
Yeah. So Cheryl, I have a question. So I think if I understood you, that Friends of Feline does not proactively perform TNR. So you don't go out and round up cats unless you're invited.
That's why they're not abandoned. They're given back to the people that are caring for them. We work with those people that ask for assistance.
Yeah. So you wouldn't go out round up cats and then release them wherever.
No.
They have to apply to
Yeah.
Friends of Feline. So they'll have an application.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Sure.
Cheryl.
Yes.
So you have an ordinance in Topeka And we don't have an ordinance here, right? That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Because we have something that we're trying to work with.
Correct.
So, I mean, no, that could just take forever. Never mind.
I think I know where you're going with this.
What
but I
I'm
would like you to
wondering
ask your
is
question.
in your ordinance that you have, do you have like specific numbers of cats that people can have and all this stuff that she's been talking about?
Yeah.
Is it similar to this?
I'm not exactly sure what their ordinance says. I just know they do allow it, but they do have also stricter, pet cat restrictions too.
Mhm.
So that
So I
also
should read
needs to
that
be done.
ordinance. Okay, thank you.
She lives in North Riverside.
Yeah, she just researched the Topeka ordinance.
Oh,
She
yeah,
was-
I just-
she's a
conflict to be
district.
completed.
Yeah, she lives in district.
Ellen Corner, Querner. I'm the District 1 representative to the ACAB Board or the Animal Services Advisory Board. I'm gonna answer your question about the ordinance in Topeka. I do wish I had more than 2 minutes because there's so many things that I could address and answer your questions for. First of all, they don't have an ordinance. Their ordinance is one half of a sentence long that says that they will not touch an ear-tipped cat. If it's an ear-tipped cat, they don't pick it up, they don't accept it into their shelter, and they don't do any cruelties or nuisances on them. And I have talked to animal control there, not the TNR people, but people that run animal control. So they don't truly have an ordinance. Their ordinance says cats and dogs have to be licensed unless it's an ear-tipped feral cat. And then they do not touch that cat. So that's where the numbers come, because they don't handle them. It's up to the neighbors to take care of a nuisance on an ear-tipped cat, because they will not touch it. If you'd like to contact them, I will, I don't have any, please call them and find out exactly. But don't talk to TNR people, talk to the ordinance people, or to the animal control. I'm asking you not to accept or not to approve this ordinance because it is not complete. Stephanie has said it's not complete. Other people have said it's not complete. If you accept this, you're going to put into, or if you approve it, it's going to be a flawed ordinance. We need to send it back. The vote to approve this was 4-3. 3 of us right now here have tried to put in some of the amendments that would make this a good ordinance. I'm not against TNR. I'm against this for the TNR policy. We have to have microchipping for the cats. We have to have a limit of the numbers of cats that are in a community. You don't want 5 cat caregivers on your block, because that would be, you would have about 40 cats. Okay, we just want some simple things. We also want protection of the wildlife, to protect the wildlife parks and the designated wildlife areas. Now, euthanasia rates are being used as a success. I'm sorry, because there is so much that you guys have not heard.
Let me ask you a question, Ellen. How would we protect the wildlife parks?
We are asking for a buffer zone of about 1,000 feet to where you do not have cat colonies on the park, right on the borders of the parks, to where they are coming into the parks.
Thank you.
And I think someone's going to be speaking to that.
And someone said what?
There'll be someone to speak about that.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for Ellen? Thank you.
My name's Tom Hubert. I live in this district in 5820 North Region. I'm also currently the president of Wichita Audubon. I spoke to you guys last month about this ordinance, and so I don't want to repeat anything I said. That maybe what some of it was referring to. I'm asking you again to vote no, because this ordinance is not ready to become a law in Wichita. It has too many holes in it. It was prepared without consulting with wildlife experts. It relied too heavily on a few activists who only care about the life of cats. You've heard many stories about how TNR works, and it does at the individual level, and maybe for a colony. It makes people feel good to save the kitties. But TNR does not work for population control in a city like Wichita. In spite of what you may have heard, there's a lot of anecdotal information, there's a lot of hearsay information, but the scientific studies from Smithsonian and from Oklahoma State University say TNR does not control the population of a large city like this. There are too many. It doesn't work because there are too many stray cats, there's too many pet owners who let their cats run outside, and too many pets are dumped. We need an ordinance that addresses the problem of abandonment and which protects the property rights of homeowners who don't want a cat in their backyard. This ordinance is also incomplete because it doesn't include the guidelines which are necessary on how to manage a cat colony. We can't just leave it to the city legal department to write this Animal Services should have included it in the ordinance. The police board, it was referred to that the police set up a board to review the ordinance. There was nothing that came out of that. City manager said that they couldn't put anything in that was from the board. The park board reviewed this, park department reviewed it. There's no input from them either in this ordinance. Wichita Audubon provided input in both of those, and none of our comments are included in this ordinance. So we're asking you to not approve this ordinance. We need an education program from Animal Services because of the complaints of neighbors that you've heard tonight. This ordinance has already been rejected by the three devs. District 3 voted to reject it by 7-1. District 4 turned it down 6-3. District 2 voted 7-1 with 1 abstention.
Thank you.
So people have rejected it already.
Thank you.
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did the city manager, or were you there when for that, you said he didn't allow what board to have input in the
What I
ordinance?
understood hearsay from my side was
Okay.
Wichita Audubon had a meeting with the police department from the Animal Services. We had a list of things we thought should be added to this. This is some of what was in the paper that I gave you last month, some of those requests. And what I understand is we were not allowed to have that input at this time. That only the document that came out of Animal Services was allowed to be submitted before you folks and before the city council. So all of the recommendations from the park board, from the police, and from Audubon and other citizens has not been included.
And Tom, I didn't capture that, and I think it's necessary that I do. You said 3 other boards denied it. Can you tell me what boards and what the vote was again, please?
District 3 was the first one that met, and that was, I believe, the first of this month.
And what was the vote?
7-1. They voted, the motion was to reject rather than to approve.
And what was the other 2?
District 4 turned it down 6-3. And then on Monday night, District 2 voted 7-1 with 1 abstention. And after the vote, District 2 had a lot of discussion about what could be done to improve it, what needed to be, what else could be added to the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
go ahead, Beck.
So in all these different boards, DABs, the reason it was rejected because they felt like the ordinance was incomplete. It needed to address, like, you're talking about a colony litter box, something like that, and microchips rather than to get better data in regards to where the cat came from. So actually, we have an ordinance, it's a start.
It's a start.
But do you feel it needs more specific language? Again, litter box, microchips.
We fear that if it's approved, then these additions will not be included, there will be no further discussion about it.
So how much time are we gonna have in regards to continue this debate about a problem that's here? I mean, seems like some of these suggestions are fairly reasonable. I mean, it sounds kind of goofy, but if you've ever had a cat in a litter box that would be placed in for the colony.
We're gonna vote on that, Bill, in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're gonna vote on that.
I have one more
Yes,
speaker
one
before.
more speaker, and then we're gonna come back for discussion. I think those are good points.
Okay.
Sir, if you just give your name, you don't need to give your
Yeah,
address.
my name's Michael Nolan, and I've been attending these meetings since September. The very first meeting I was at, a lawyer from Friends of Felines was there explaining the ordinance that they wanted to see. And the things that the lawyer from Friends of Felines was most concerned about was that there was no ownership of the cats. They wanted their caregivers to have no legal liability for these cats. And they wanted no ear tags or the microchips, because they didn't want the cats to be identified. All of the issues that you've heard tonight came up in front of the board. The board was not well, 4 members of the board were not interested in discussing any of these things. The 3 members of the board that were interested in discussing these things are here discussing it. I really feel the entire process was designed to just push out a product. They weren't concerned about what was in it. They just wanted a TNR program out so that these organizations could get funding from charities. The problem is, it's my understanding that PetSmart and Petco charities have found TNR to be a giant black hole that accomplishes nothing, and they're going to stop funding it. And my question is, if we're expecting charities to fund the city's responsibilities, and they decide to stop funding them, then who's going to fund them? If we're, do we expect volunteers to cough up thousands more out of their own pockets? You know, that's not going to happen. Another quick thing, they keep talking about using euthanasia rates as some sort of measure that this is working. Euthanasia rates don't make sense if the number of intakes into the system have been constant. The only thing that's come down is the euthanasia rate.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will,
Clarification?
on what you said?
No, on what he said.
No.
We do not have a lawyer.
No.
We never
Oh,
have.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
That would be the only, yeah.
Thanks, okay. All right, I'm gonna bring it back to the ward. Bill, do you wanna start?
Well, looking, I mean, I'm a cat owner, I've got them neutered, I've got them spayed. You know, they're in and out, we've got a fenced-in yard, but I mean, we've got cats around the neighborhood, I don't know who's taking care of, but I think neutering and capturing, neutering, and spading makes sense in inoculations, but I also would agree with some of the stuff I've seen here, like, you know, a sufficient, a dug litter box area sufficient for the size of the colony to keep them within the caregiver's yard would certainly help. Microchips would be a better way to keeping track, and you know, we've heard a figure that can't be verified. $3.50 for that. And I'm not sure. I'm confused about the caregiver's responsibility. I mean, we see something in the ordinance that says, you know, the caregiver, if there's the colony is found to be a nuisance, well, the caregiver is the one that's going to get called to task on that in regards to trying to resolve the nuisance. So it would seem that they do have some responsibility in regards to making sure this colony isn't a nuisance, and they've got a timeline to try to make sure that this nuisance is resolved. And you know, there's penalties, and the penalty is, it seems, as I understand it, is the cats will be taken away and euthanized. So, I mean, I don't know how long this dialogue's been going on, but we certainly have dialogue continuing, and I think we've got, at least with this ordinance, we've got something that we can look at and I think perhaps tighten up in regards to make sure it's more effective for the animals and for the property owners that are around the animals.
So what's your point? You're saying that you think that we need an ordinance, but it needs more work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
Cindy, with that being just the conversation there that that Bill mentioned, that just the ordinance might need some more work, does that by us as a board need to reject the current? Or can we make a recommendation with?
You
I
could.
think that's a great
You-
discussion
yeah.
outside of this board.
Yes.
What's that?
I said I think that like making recommendations, like we would just reject as proposed to us, and it needs to be a greater conversation outside of our board specifically.
Well,
as a
you could make
show.
recommendations, though, what you wanted looked at in terms of
Yeah,
the
that's-
ordinance.
Yeah.
So you could
Yeah.
reject it and say, here's the reasons
Sure.
why. You could endorse it
With
with
conditions.
these conditions. So whichever way you wanted to
Yeah.
do it.
I just thought we heard a lot of what they believe, those who don't support it. Sound like there was a lot of TNR support, there just needed to be some more policy updating and more precise information there on how
So
to
you
govern
could
that.
list those out.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I wrote down that I kept hearing was just, limited cats in the community, microchipped, working with, parks, having community neighbors input, and then more dialogue around owner responsibility.
Is that a motion?
Hold on, Denise has a question.
Okay. What was the motion?
We
There is
didn't,
no motion.
we didn't make a
There is
motion
no
yet.
motion.
We're just talking.
If we endorse this, how difficult is it to amend the ordinance?
Yeah, that's
The government.
No, that
Jan
would
would
be,
be-
we are the government.
No,
No,
we're
so
not
we-
the government.
No, Jan would
This
be
is-
able to speak on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, you're only an advisory board, so
Right.
there's
So
no
that's what-
binding, it's nothing binding.
Sure.
Well, I guess what I'm asking, if we endorse this with these we can endorse it with these recommendations,
That'll go forward then to come back to city council.
city council, and then city council can direct
Right.
the
Yeah.
animal control people, okay, we'll endorse this, but you need to make these changes if that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you
Nothing
could-
done here is
Or
binding.
you could reject it and say, here are the reasons we rejected it.
Okay.
So whoever
Okay.
makes the motion can make
Understand.
that determination.
It just seems like we need to start somewhere. If we keep doing this over and over and over, it doesn't matter how many times you improve it, there are gonna be 50 people that don't approve of the ordinance
Yeah.
as it's written, so I really think we need to start somewhere, and maybe, she can tell us how hard it is to amend
So an ordinance?
Yeah.
an ordinance,
I'd actually like to hear that response, like,
yeah.
Like if city council adopted an ordinance and then we wanted to amend it, how difficult would that be?
It's really hard. I have to come back to all the dads.
But we do it all the time.
This hasn't even been passed, so this one's very easy.
sure,
And
But
it's
if
not
it is
difficult.
passed,
sure.
Well, if it is passed, it's still not difficult, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, but it's just, what you're getting at is just, it's work, and it's the logistics of getting back community input and whatnot, and so, I mean, I think to Linda's point, I would add that I think, I would agree that there's a starting place, and I think we're already in that starting place, but I would fear that if we, put out an ordinance that's fairly open, and there's a desire for amendments, I think this begins in more of a, I just feel like we're creating more work for ourselves where we could do a lot more work on the back end and create a more solid ordinance. If that's what we're gonna talk about, and that's where I guess I would say I'm currently leaning is just, do the work on the back end before an ordinance fully comes before the council.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we're in the community input piece and we might as well, we're hearing it. And so if we can put it back to city council with some of these policy ads, I think it would be cleaner for everybody.
Yeah, because the concern is they got this far without a lot of TNR supporters out here that weren't able to, or at least their voice wasn't heard. So I wouldn't have much confidence to pass it and then think it'll change.
Bill, go ahead.
Could I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I mean, looking at, the list that was provided to us about, looking at other conditions that could be placed in this ordinance, such as microchips. What's the advantage of a microchip over an ear tag in regards to the ultimate goal of stabilizing and reducing the feral cat population?
If you're talking specifically about sterilizing the cat population, microchip is not something that actually affects the sterilization.
But does it help give data in regards to what's happening with that cat colony and what's happening with that caregiver with that cat colony?
Like if it's caught,
Yeah.
it would just be it could be an identifying factor of where it goes or, when it was last
Internet
in.
wouldn't provide that. So
It
there
just,
is an advantage.
it
for
just
chips.
indicates that the animal has been trapped, neutered, and released with the ear cut, yes.
Right, but with the chip, you could identify where the cat colony was at, who the caregiver was.
yes, you could.
Wouldn't that be better data, you know?
It could be, yeah.
You know, what about the idea of, each colony should have a dug litter box sufficient for the size of the colony, providing means of living in the use of adjoining properties litter box? This is a real practical consideration. I mean, because cats like to get in flower beds, you know, and do their duty. But, you know, they also like to dig in sandboxes. So, I mean, this seems like a common sense approach. Why isn't it in the ordinance? So how long has this been floating about, this idea?
So this actually started in committee,
How long ago?
in 2015 when the committee was formed. And then it came to the board.
Folks, I'm going to have to ask that you reduce the chatter, please. We're trying to get somewhere.
And then it came to the board at the end of summer last year. So I think it was July is when it first came,
Okay.
whenever it was presented.
Dialogue takes time.
It does, and I want to be very clear. The people that you heard today, I have seen every month since like September. So it's not, I mean, we've heard them, we've talked with them, and I would be remiss if I said that this is perfect. I don't think it's perfect either. But starting somewhere was a jumping off point.
Well, we've got to start, but, you know,
Right.
we can put in some nuance to what we've got, can't we? I mean, is there,
Well, Bill, you can make a motion with the things you're saying right now if you'd like.
I just own cats, I'm not a cat expert. I know what I like about cats and what I
But you
wanna
have
see in
common
cats
sense,
behave.
and you're making common sense statements.
Okay,
You can
well, I
work with
suggest
that.
then, you know, we look at what we need to do is, one, data was mentioned, you know, as a way to keeping track of how the program's working, who the caregivers are. If an ear tag doesn't do that, let's look at a microchip. And let's look at the expense. Let's go ahead and confirm what that expense is. And if we can assist the caregivers in that. And then, you know, just having a litter box makes a lot of sense. It's gonna be a big litter box for 8 cats. And then also providing shelter for the cats year round, not just in the summer, but something that's, you know, better than a box, something that's plastic, that would have straw in it or something like that, that they can get in and out of. Now, the caregiver would probably need assistance with that. I mean, you got 8 cats, that's a lot of money to spend on cats and just food. So I think we've got an ordinance, but I think we've got some stuff here that was presented during this dialogue that I certainly think could be, should be considered in regards to adding to this ordinance to make it more specific. Now, caregiver responsibility, you know, we've got a section about that. I'm not sure about transparency. I think the chip would help with transparency. I might be wrong. But, you know, do any other board members have any feelings about, if we're gonna just reject it, are we gonna reject it and say, here's what we need to do before we can consider passing it? Or are we gonna go ahead and say, let's look at this and let's add some of these other qualities here? What's the rest of the board think?
Well, I'd like to recommend an endorsement.
Huh?
I'd like to recommend an endorsement of this with the recommendations of, the chip.
What you just said.
The
Yeah,
chip.
the chips,
Yeah,
the litter
have that added.
boxes, and
Yeah, because we've gotta start somewhere. This is gonna go on forever.
that's 4 years is a long time.
Yeah, and we have
Matt,
to.
you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm going back and forth, and I just wonder, I mean, I feel like it's 6 1 half you know, the other, you know, if we reject it with these conditions, or we, and say, bring these in, or if we endorse it and say, hey, these need to be considered, I feel like we're saying the same thing, just different ways of saying it, so I go back and forth. I definitely think that the ordinance is fairly open. I mean, I would go back to, I think owner responsibility probably needs to be addressed a little bit more clearly. I think having neighbor/community input is important. I think protection of parks. I know Troy, there was an email I got with Troy's, is not for this because of their being in the parks. So I think that it needs to be looked at. I'm not saying that these need to be officially in that, but, you know, and then I think the limit of cats in the community, you know, I don't think, you know, I think about the street that I live on Florence. I don't think I don't foresee 10 houses all saying, hey, we're gonna take 8 cats, and all of a sudden we have 80 cats. I don't think that's gonna be a thing, but I think it's definitely something worth specifying for legal reasons. I don't know, I don't. So no, I don't, I think if there's a motion to approve with conditions, I would be behind it. If we wanna reject it for these reasons, I would, so.
I think knowing that you want something of TNR, what it
Yeah.
looks like is yet to be seen.
So, I mean, if I can, full transparency here, I'm a dog person. And, and so,
I am too, I'm not gonna lie.
I grew up with a cat and, his name was Ace and that thing was annoying. And, not to be insensitive at all, I've never really, just not been my thing, but, and I'll be honest, I'm more of a rural background, I'm not going to get into the gory details, but I think I've been fairly educated these last several months, and so even talking to my dad about all this, he's going really, but long story short, I would support a TNR ordinance. I believe that the policy needs to be tightened up with the things that Bill has suggested that I think we've heard from the community tonight. So I'll make a motion that we endorse with the conditions.
So I've got a list of conditions if you want me to help you out. All right.
Yeah, list of conditions. List what you have, and then I definitely entertain more.
So the motion with the list of conditions, the conditions that I've heard are the following: to implement microchipping, the litter box piece, year-round shelter, gather community input, and park protection be implemented. Those are the things I have. Am I missing anything?
I would ask the board if there's an input that we need to add as far as conditions, or that we've heard from the community that we think would be important to tighten up the policy.
If there's not a litter box, then something to the effect, I've heard that owners, if adjoining property, can put things or plant certain things on their property to keep cats away from pooping in their yard.
Yeah, but then you're asking for people that aren't the caregiver to do things. That's not. We can only be asking what the caregiver would be doing.
That's a good point.
And
that can be an education.
Yeah. Did you add in there anything about owner responsibility?
How would you like me to word that?
I would say that
owners be responsible for
nuisance and.
I think it's already in here.
It was vague. I felt like at least the way I read it.
Really, where's that?
Looking at. Are we under?
That would send to the nuisance.
Where is it?
Would be under, it's on 3 on the technically the 3rd page is where I was getting this from. It is a responsible party, but not an owner of the community cat colony, has no legal rights to feral cats. The responsibility of the community cat colony does not impact the caregiver's right to ownership. That's probably what I'm not wanting to read.
What section?
At the bottom of the second
That was
last
under-
page.
it was under-
E, feral cats, and public nuisance, and then it goes on to the next page.
E, feral cats.
So it's on the back of that page. It's at the very bottom.
Okay, I see.
There you go.
Question, will be given notice in writing regarding the nature of the nuisance.
Yeah, but I guess more or less is like if it wanders into another person's property, is the caregiver responsible for damages or something like that?
Registered people that let their cats run, their domestic cats run, they run across other people's property.
Sure, but they would be responsible if it was as a domestic cat, and so I think that's necessary for ownership of the caregiver, because from my understanding, caregivers, it's a volunteer. Like, we love them, we're going to protect them and feed them. I think it needs to be added as to the responsibility too through volunteering on that. So that's my motion.
Okay, so your motion is to approve with the following conditions: that the animal be microchipped, that the litter box be provided by the caregiver for the amount of cats, right? That there be shelter provided year round, that community input be gathered before allowance,
Colony registration.
and that park protections be implemented. and that owner responsibility for nuisance issues also be implemented. And that's your motion?
That's my
Let
motion.
me ask for a clarification. What's the community input one?
That's the one
the
where
neighbors.
you would get community input from the neighbors,
Yeah,
and that it would be the
yeah.
bulk of the neighbors saying,
Oh, so it's
I heard-
like community approval.
Community
yeah,
approval.
Yeah,
Approval.
yeah.
You're
Which
right.
I think I heard tonight was
Okay.
the majority, and not
Yeah.
just an
Not
absolute
just
number.
one person.
Yep.
couldn't- okay.
And so I would approve that.
All right.
so that
And-
motion's on the motion, I'll repeat one more
Okay.
time. So there's a motion to approve under the following conditions, that the
To
animal,
recommend approval.
to recommend approval under the following conditions. Oh, boy. That the animal be microchipped, that a litter box be provided for the amount of cats, for shelter to be provided year-round, for community approval, a majority community approval of the neighbors, for park protections to be implemented, and for owner responsibility for nuisance issues to be implemented.
Now, park protection, you mean the hedge or west?
Wildlife buffer.
Wildlife
Wildlife
bumper,
buffer.
right.
Is there a
There's a
second?
motion.
Yeah, is there a second?
Linda seconds.
And, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Actually, please raise your hand. Yeah. All opposed.
Opposed?
Four.
Okay,
It's a tie.
all right. It's non-binding, so it doesn't, right? It's non-binding.
So it doesn't matter.
matter.
I could have went home at 6.
It's tied, 4-4. That's right. All right. I want to thank all of you who came to talk about this tonight. You guys did a really good job of not repeating points, and you were very respectful of each other, and I really appreciate that. So,
And I thank the board for listening, because it looks like from what they listened to the group and they found the concerns that were there and addressed them. So
thank
that's what we're asking.
all right. We have just a few more, so if you're leaving, could you leave quietly, please, because we are still having a meeting. We have just a few other things to consider. So, issues of concern? Any concerns? Yep, Greg?
3318.
Give me just a second here, Greg.
Yeah, tell me when. Say when.
When? 3318.
West 9th, northeast corner of Gow and 9th Street.
Hold on just a second. Hey,
Hey,
folks,
folks,
we can't have this conversation
Yeah,
stuff.
can
We
we-
got to keep it moving.
Thank you.
Let's just hold on a second, Greg, and let these folks leave,
Yeah.
okay?
Thank
Thanks
you,
for your
Stephanie,
time,
for
folks.
I hope I got an A on my presentation.
You did. Thank you.
How long ago was that?
Thanks, Jan, for being here. We
I
appreciate it.
graduated from Wichita State like in 2004, I think. Long time ago.
So Cindy, you were.
And her husband's.
44.
She was the interim dean when I was
That's true.
Thank you,
All right,
folks.
thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Okay, issue, Greg?
Yeah, so.
Okay, 33.
Northeast corner of Gow and.
Okay, hold on real quick. I got 318 West 9th, okay? And
It's the
then,
it's the northeast corner.
Okay.
Yard needs to be mowed.
okay.
I let it go.
It needs mowed?
Cow.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anything else? Any
Yes,
other issues?
two questions.
Yes.
Last year, we had about this time, fire department came around and told us what they were gonna do for the 4th of July. Are they gonna come around and tell us what they're gonna do for the 4th of July?
Do you mean in terms of the fireworks ordinance? Yes, let's ask him to do that, Brandon, okay? Because we wanna make sure we ask them specifically, because they'll come and they'll talk and they'll answer questions, but they may not speak specifically unless we ask them.
Right, because there were concerns from last year and
Yeah.
so how were those resolved?
Right, and so just, they did bring that back, we got a review at city council
Mhm.
during a workshop, and so in workshop, we don't vote.
Yep.
But the consensus was, let's give it another year with fire and police making some not policy changes, just, yeah, adjustments to their processes to see how that might work, and so they could come back and talk about that.
That would be fair enough.
All right.
The other point was,
So make sure you ask about
a little bit more, it was this past fall, it was in the last budget review, so it was July of last year, and the presenters were indicating why they were cutting, and in particular, or cutting budgets with particular to libraries along those lines. And so we asked the question, what are other cities doing for making their communities viable? Or what is it that says that a community is viable? Because we were taking these services out, or by taking these services out, does that make the city less viable? So we asked the question for city manager to come back and give a presentation or to provide insight as to what do other cities do? What is the budget that they have, or what percent of their budget do they use for cities our size or one step up to indicate or present a viable community? I guess I'm a little confused on myself, but the whole idea was, we're saying we have to cut, we have to cut, we have to cut, but if we cut, no one's gonna come.
Right.
Okay, so let me see if I can recapture that real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on just a second. Make sure this is what you were asking, Greg. We asked what made a community viable. Can the city manager come present to say what other cities do to make a city viable, and how much do they spend to do so?
Yeah, and it was, yes, that's close enough.
So the city manager, I actually got a white paper from city staff that did some comparisons to the peer cities that James Chung identified. And so I will dig that out and see if we couldn't just distribute that to.
Okay, because we're gonna be
down there.
faced with asking to accept the budget here in 2 months, right?
We are.
And so it is, how do we use this data to say that's good for Wichita?
Yep, I can send that to you. I will tell you, the budget looks much better this year than it did last year. So we had a budget retreat last week, and so.
Because you're in office, Cindy, that's why.
What's that?
Because you got in office.
Yeah, since I've been in office, look at that, just turns around. I wish I could take credit for that.
You should.
But I will pull that paper out and see if I can't get
That'd
that
be good.
distributed to all of you. I'll check with the manager, because actually staff wrote that.
cool.
It should be
Yeah, it should be
open.
available.
Should be, yeah, we should make it available. Any other issues of concern?
Cindy, I have one.
Yeah.
Are they started work on Waco? Are they fixing the street repair, or they're doing something else?
Between 15th and 21st?
Yeah.
They are repairing it.
They're repairing it?
Yes.
Okay.
So they are going down to, so between Murdoch and 15th, they just went in there and did one of those kind of patch repairs of
Okay.
microsurface. Between 15th and 21st, they're actually taking that all up, repairing that brick
The
cobblestone
bricks, yeah.
underneath,
Okay.
and then going in with a more adhesive surface over that.
Okay.
So we shouldn't have, we'll get rid of all that popped out stuff. So,
Okay,
yes,
that's
I'm
good.
very excited about
Me
this.
too. Me too.
And
I'm very
it won't
excited.
be 4 lane, will it?
No, because
it's
they've
not.
taken
They
it,
put it
yeah.
on road diet.
It's not really
Right.
4 lane.
Yeah, it will be. Bill?
City council turned down the cell tower.
Yes, I was going to speak about that.
So, we are open now to the possibility of a lawsuit.
We are.
I think this body and this district needs to hear from the planning department, the legal department, and also park department in regards to how the feds' new rules on these cell towers affect our ability to place these in areas that are least offensive while providing the services that people want, but also this industry is pushing on us.
Right.
I mean, and Ferris is right about the park department.
Right, they
You've
don't.
got, it's, but like in Riverside area, you've got a linear park around the river. You don't have a large park unless it's spread out somewhat, but we don't have the flexibility we had 2 years ago when these started.
That is true. Now, I did, the motion I made, and I wish I would have brought it with me tonight, but I made it based on aesthetics. And I worked with the legal department to make sure that the way that I stated that they believe it will be upheld in court. But it was based on aesthetics.
It's a terrible sight.
Yeah, so we voted yesterday 5-2 to deny. So it was,
I think this district's gonna have to look at some park sites, and we need to get the park. We just don't have the flexibility, and the folks that were protesting the first site, and the school district's hot and cold on it.
right, they are.
Which I don't
They
understand.
are. Yeah, and we can't control that, so I
That
don't
makes a
know.
different form.
Yeah, so.
That's all I got.
Okay, thanks. Neighborhood reports, anything from the neighborhoods, any events coming up? Anything?
Nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening. I am speaking at the Benjamin Hills Pleasant Valley Neighborhood Association next week, next Tuesday, so I'll be there to speak to them. Okay, just two more things. So I left you the annual report, edition of this. This is kind of cool to look through all the stuff that went on in the city last year, and so you may actually even recognize. And then the last thing I want to talk about is there is a new budget simulator, and you can get to it from wichita.gov. It's also on our Facebook page. It is so cool. Has anybody looked at it? It's hard. To make those decisions. So it's really cool. It's very easy to use. It has, I think, 7 sections. So what you do is you put in the value of your home, and then it'll tell you what your property taxes are and the value of that home. Then you have 7 different areas that you can choose from, including police and fire, cultural arts, public works, all the streets, all of that. And it has little sliders that says, okay, if you want more police, here's what would happen to your property taxes. If you want less police, here's what would happen to your property taxes. And it's got all these, so you can see what happens as you think about how we make change. So it would be really useful for you guys to look at that before the budget comes to us, because you can begin to see.
You're looking at what makes your city viable.
Yes.
What do you want to pay for?
Yeah, and it's very descriptive. It says, add X amount of new police officers, or even this many more, or, cut this or that.
Whenever
You
you
have a
add, you
question on that,
Well,
Richard?
Yeah, about that. It only looks at the consequences of changing those. It only looks at the value of your property taxes, right?
Yes.
It doesn't look at, like, if you decrease the police down to 0, your property value may decline if there's no police.
Right, absolutely.
You have a higher rate of possibility of being mugged or your house burning to the ground.
It's a great tool.
I had someone kiddingly say, I got our property taxes down to 0.
Yeah.
So, but just that reason though, so. But anyway, please look at it, and it's real easy, real intuitive. Linda says it's hard to make those decisions, right? But I think that's really a good thing to look at that, because the point of that is also for citizens to understand the decisions that your council members have to make. So it's not just as easy as saying, let's just cut that over. It's really thinking about how that affects people and what it does to them. So anyway, if you would look at that.
Soviet Union ran a huge propaganda campaign while they were around. Look what happened to them.
They have propaganda campaign. You think this is a propaganda campaign?
No, Joel.
Well, on that note.
On that note, do we have a motion to adjourn?
101.
That's right.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
JD.
All in favor, please say aye. All right. Thank you all for being here tonight and setting through a long meeting. Appreciate it.
Let me finish this real quick.